We're good, thank you. Welcome everybody to the October 17th, 2023 Planning Board meeting. Catherine, if you can give our compliance to the Open Public Meeting Act, please.
Good evening. This is the special meeting of Livingston Planning Board. Notice of this meeting has been published in accordance with the Open Public Meeting Act.
Thank you. If you can take the roll, please.
Mr. Klein?
Here.
Mr. Reiner?
Here.
Mr. Weaver?
Here.
Ms. Cucci? Here. Ms. Bagoli?
Here.
Ms. Wishner? Here. Mr. Fernandez?
Here.
Quorum. We also have our board attorney, our assistant township engineer, our traffic consultant, and planning consultant.
Thank you. And Catherine, if you can please call the first matter.
This is a continued hearing from September 5th, 2023 for a preliminary and final site plan with variances located at 39 West Northfield Road, Block 4801, Lot 9, application number 2023-20-PFSPV for 39 West Northfield Associates LLC.
Thank you, and welcome back. Just a quick overview for members of the public that may not have been here last time. The applicant's attorney will present witnesses and question the witnesses, and then any members of the public will then have the opportunity to ask questions of that witness as to that witness's testimony. That'll continue until all the witnesses are finished, at which point, if there's anybody that wants to present their own experts, they can do that. And then after that's all done, at the end of the hearing, then there'll be the opportunity to give statements under oath, either in support of or in opposition to the application. So with that, why don't we get moving, please?
Okay, good evening, everyone. John Scala. Pleasure to be back before the board this evening, here tonight, once again. Can you hear me all right?
You have to push the button.
Oh, green light. There we go. All right. Okay, here we go again. Good evening, everyone. John Scala on behalf of 39 West Northfield Associates, LLC. My client is the owner of the property that's the subject of this application, located at 39 West Northfield Road, Livingston. This is a continuation of the public hearing, which commenced on September 5th, 2023. I always like to give a quick summary and, what you heard previously and the nature of the application. The subject property is located in the township's B Central Business Zoning District. Your B zone is one that does allow for a wide variety of commercial uses, including but not limited to retail sales and services, eating and drinking establishments, and business and professional offices. This property has historically been developed for commercial use. My understanding, it was originally a supermarket use. It was later developed into a health and fitness club facility. I believe originally it was a Jack LaLanne, and it later became a New York Sports Club. New York Sports Club closed that facility in August of 2020 during the pandemic, and the property's been vacant for the past 3 years. I can advise my client spent a considerable amount of time over that 3-year period trying to find a suitable commercial tenant for the property with use that would actually comply with zoning and be permitted here in your commercial zone district. What they didn't do was follow the trend of pursuing high-density multifamily residential housing on the subject property, which is, as everyone on this board knows, has become quite common. And with that, the impacts from perspective of traffic, impacts on schools, as well as demand on municipal services. We are here before you tonight seeking preliminary and final site plan approval to permit the development of a 2-story, 55,200 square foot professional medical office building, which would be occupied by this Summit Medical Group. As we discussed at the last hearing, the building is essentially being proposed right in the same footprint where the New York Sports Club building is currently located. By and large, this is a project that meets the majority of the township's B zoning district standard. The use is permitted, medical office. Our proposed floor area is permitted. We comply with your ordinance requirements as they pertain to building height, building setbacks, building coverage, impervious coverage, and the majority of the other bulk standards. As I indicated at the last meeting, we do have 9 bulk variances. 5 of those relate to building signage and the freestanding sign, and you'll hear more about that. The other variance relief we have pertains to off-street parking, which you're certainly going to, you heard about the last time. You're going to hear and see more about that this evening. Setback to a residential property line. It's actually an existing condition that we're improving upon, and we've got some other dimensional relief. Back in September, when the hearing started, you heard the testimony of Brian Natali, Senior VP of Development and Facilities for Summit Health. He provided detailed testimony regarding the need for this facility and the healthcare benefits that it will provide to the community. He spoke to the reason for choosing this particular location, located in a B's business zone with a permitted use. And he discussed all aspects of the operations, number of employees, doctors, number of patients that would be expected on a typical day, refuse, recycling, how they handle medical waste and the like. He also mentioned the fact that unlike their location at 75 East Northfield, this building is not going to have an urgent care component, so it's not going to be a walk-up location. Everything is by appointment only, and I think the way you really characterize it is it's going to be a really big doctor's office that is going to contain a lot of the specialists that are definitely in demand and would be beneficial to the community. You also heard the testimony of our professional engineer, Mike Lanzafama, regarding all aspects of the civil design of the project, with the exception of landscaping and lighting, which is going to be addressed by Brian Conway this evening. We did have a considerable amount of questions, comments, and concerns that were raised by the public during our witness testimony, and particularly questioning the need for the parking lot expansion, landscaping, buffering, refuse location, stormwater management, and the like. We did have the opportunity to speak with a few of the neighbors immediately following the meeting. I can advise you that our design team went to work immediately after that September 5th meeting with respect to the items that were raised, and that included modification and enhancements to the landscaping and the perimeter fencing, further modifications, including a shift to the parking lot and reorientation of a number of the parking spaces, movement of the refuse enclosure away from the closest neighboring property, and we did relocate the EV chargers, which was a concern by our neighbor immediately behind. We also received a communication and an invite to meet with our neighbors, and we agreed to that meeting. Actually, our professionals, our design team, Mr. Conway, Mr. Lanzafama, and one of the owner's reps met with the neighbors, or a number of the neighbors anyway, on September 30th, discussed the plan modifications that we were proposing, and really just in an effort to try to address their concerns that we heard over the course of the last meeting. So that's where we are at the moment. In terms of this evening, our intention is to pick up, our first witness is going to be Brian Conway. He's really here to speak about the landscaping and lighting, but he's also going to speak to the modifications that we made since we were here in September, those items that I spoke about, and I didn't touch on all of them. We also have Harold Maltz. He's our traffic engineer. He's going to go through his traffic report and speak to traffic generation and parking. Our project architect, Lance Blake, is here as well. He'll get into the building design and building elevations, floor plans. And finally, time permitting, Mike Lanzafama is here. He's going to be coming back before the board in his capacity as a professional planner to speak to the variances we have. So unless anybody has any questions of me, I'd like to turn the floor over to Mr. Conway and have him sworn in, and I'll ask him to put his qualifications on the record.
That would be great, thank you.
Mr. Conway, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Conway, can you please provide the board with a brief summary of your educational, professional background and licenses you hold?
Certainly. My name is Brian Conway. I'm a landscape architect and professional planner. A graduate of Rutgers University, Cook College. Both my licenses are in good standing. I've been before this board and many others throughout the state many times as a landscape architect and professional planner.
Any questions from any members of the board? Any objections? Thank you. Is admitted as accepted as an expert in landscape architecture.
Thank you. Mr. Conway, I'm just going to turn the floor over to you. I know your office made some plan revisions and the like. We did not get at all really into any details regarding the landscaping as originally proposed or, you know, as now amended. So I'll just ask you to run through those.
Certainly.
I know you're going to have some exhibits. And if my notes are correct on this, we're going to be picking up, as you mark them, with Exhibit A4.
Yes.
Okay.
So let's get started with an exhibit right now. It's a revised, rendered version of the site plan. And I'd like to walk you through the changes that we've made since the last meeting. So we listened to the neighbors after the last meeting, and we made changes to the
Wait,
plan.
just before we do it, so this is a revised rendering. Can you just
Is this
describe it for the
revised
record?
A1?
This is a revised
revised
A
A1.
revised A1, but we're marking it as it's
Four.
Exhibit
A4.
A4.
Which is what was A1 now revised.
Correct.
The revision date, please.
September 29, 2023. So I'd like to start to talk about the revisions we made that relate to 22 West Harrison Place, which is the neighbor immediately to the north. The first thing that we did was we moved the 6-foot-high vinyl earth tone fence. It was originally on the outside of the plantings. The neighbor had asked us to move it to the inside of the plantings, and we moved the fence to the inside of the plantings, and what that enabled us to do was to heavy up the planting in the immediate area to the north, adjacent to their home. So we're able to provide a double staggered row in that area as opposed to a single row of green giant arborvitae. The next thing we did was a little bit, we had taken the entire employee parking row, and we had shifted it to the south a couple of feet, and then we eliminated the northernmost parking space. So it increased the setback to the nearest parking to 31.6 feet. And it also, when we talk about the landscape plan, it also permitted the planting of an additional shade tree in that area. Another impact that was facilitated by that change is we moved a light pole that was closer to a location 25 feet off of that residential property line as well.
Mr.
The next-
Conway, just to make sure I understand, are you talking about Lot 10?
I'm not sure the lot number offhand, but
Is
it's
that
22
22?
West Harrison.
Okay, thank you.
So far, all these revisions are related to that area and 22 West Harrison. The next thing that we had done was we had, the access drive to the south was a 24-foot width. We reduced it to 20 feet, and we shifted the entire row of parking 4 feet to the south. What that enabled us to do was to heavy up the end island nearest, the northernmost end island nearest the property there. And in doing so, we were able to pick up the parking space that we've lost in the northernmost part there, and as well as it gave us a better planting environment for trees to provide some additional buffering from the property next door. Site plan changes we made relating to 19 Collins Terrace, which is the property immediately adjacent to the entrance. We had relocated the electric vehicle charging spaces. They were originally up against the property line here, and we relocated them to the central area on that island where the handicap parkings are located, and then also adjacent to the dumpster area, which was also relocated. For the dumpster relocation, we had shifted it to 25 feet off of the residential property lines, and we adjusted the parking in the area to facilitate the truck turning requirements. This benefits both of the adjacent properties, 22 as well as 22 West Harrison and 19 Collins. There was a net result of a loss of 1 parking space in order to accomplish that, though, in order to get the truck turning to work. And the last thing we did, which I'll talk about on the landscape plan, but it relates to the entirety of West Harrison Place, and we added some street trees in there to provide an additional layer of planting and some seasonal interest for the residents of West Harrison Place. That's a summary of the changes that we made to the site plan in response to neighbor input and other revisions we thought would help to mitigate any potential impacts to the neighbors.
Are there any questions from the board?
I have a couple. Going to the parking setback from 19 Collins. It was 18.56 feet. Has that been increased or decreased or what?
The parking setback has not been changed from the original submission.
Thank you. On the plantings that you're talking about on Harrison, I think you know that I sometimes come up with odd questions about plantings.
I look forward to them.
The variety that you're talking about is the lilac, as I recall.
A tree lilac.
It is the tree, so it's the
Correct.
single trunk variety.
Correct.
Okay. And as far as those and the other plantings along the street and on your side of the fences, how will you be ensuring that they get the proper watering and so that they get well established in the first 3 years?
And that would really be a managerial. Typically, when the landscaping is installed, the landscape contractors are required to guarantee them for a few years. I don't know, we never had discussion about irrigation systems. I don't know if that's going to be part of the parcel, but they could also be, tree gator bags could be provided as needed to keep those trees watered and well cared for.
Counselor? Would your client be willing to accept a condition as to that, if there is approval?
Yes.
Thank you.
And just to elaborate, that I asked about the tree lilac, that was chosen as a species because there are overhead wires on West Harrison, and that's a tree species that is recommended to be planted in tougher growing environments with overhead wires.
That's it for now.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? Are there any questions from the public for this witness as to this witness's? Oh, he's not done yet? Okay. Do you
Yeah,
wanna do-
I have 4 items to
You don't want to do them separately?
discuss.
You want to do them all at once? Good. Okay, fine.
Because I think he's going to speak a bit more to the landscaping and some other details.
Okay, so we'll do all the questions at the end then. Okay.
I have another exhibit to bring up.
We're going to mark this exhibit as A5, and if you can please just describe it by title and date.
Sure.
This is the fire?
This is the delivery truck turning exhibit. That was the one that were missing on the last meeting. Lee Klein had asked for us to provide it. So what this is, it's the delivery truck turning exhibit E3 dated 10/17/2023. So this is
This is A5.
A5. This is a delivery truck turning exhibit. It's for an SU-30 box truck, which was our study vehicle. The standard UPS and FedEx trucks, which I believe was testified to earlier, that would be the bulk of the deliveries, are smaller vehicles. So if the SU-30 works, the smaller vehicles will also. And what we have here is a vehicle coming in off of Collins, coming around the parking lot, pulling up, backing into the loading area, unloading, and then pulling out. The circulation works fine with no conflict.
You say there's no difficulty in the pulling in and out of the loading spaces?
Correct.
Any questions or comments from the board or from our professionals on it? No? Good, okay.
Okay. I have the lighting plan. This is the lighting plan that was originally submitted, so I guess it's not going to be marked as an exhibit. So the design process began with a review of the surrounding areas and the lighting needs. It was determined that a luminaire with good distribution and high level of control was selected, which will prevent spillage onto adjacent neighboring properties. I reviewed the options available and selected the Lithonia DSX-0, which is an updated version of the same model we used at the other Summit Health facility on Northfield. The specs are as follows. So we have an A fixture, which is the one that's nearest 22 West Harrison. And what we did for that is we provided a 12-foot pole height, which is a reduced pole height. And we have that factory dimmed to 50% of output, which puts the lumen output at 1,700 lumens, which is about the same output as two 60-watt bulbs. 60-watt bulbs is about 800 lumen output. And the type of distribution for that one is a backlight control, which has a very severe cutoff angle in the back, so that at the base of the pole, the light is essentially cut off at the base of the pole. We have the B fixture, which is a LCCO. We have that, again, also specified to be factory dimmed to 50% at about 1,670 lumens. And what that is, it's a 90-degree fixture that has a cutoff so that it only provides a 90-degree arc of light. And that's provided near the front entry to not have any spillage going back towards the neighbor at 19. The rest of the light poles are, we have the C, which is a type 2M, which is a wider distribution, not too far forward. That's against the commercial use on the south side. For the balance of the residential perimeter, we have a 14-foot pole with backlight control, which is 3,400 lumens. That's the balance of the periphery, except for the closest light at the corner. 14-foot pole, when we had originally submitted and went to the track meeting, one of the recommendations from the township engineer was to provide a lower mounting height adjacent to the residential uses. The rest of the fixtures are 18-foot poles. We have a type 5M and a type 3. Type 5 is a symmetrical. It's the same light, 360 degrees, which is in the island by the handicap spot. And then we have a type 3M, which is an asymmetrical, wide, but still some forward throw, which is opposite the main entryway. And for the parking lot lights, we have double twin 18-foot high type 3 fixtures. They're really doing the bulk of the lighting for this project. We also have two light poles proposed on Collins Terrace, which are going to be the Livingston decorative street light to match what's on Northfield. The design parameters I was striving for was a 1/2-foot candle minimum and a 1 to 1.5 foot candle average. And the statistics that were achieved were 1/2-foot candle minimum, 3-foot candle maximum, a 1.2 average. The min to max is 6 to 1. That's the uniformity, measure of uniformity. And the average to max is 2.4 to 1. That's another measure of uniformity. The lower the numbers, the better the uniformity. Anything under 3 I would consider to be excellent uniformity. So overall, in summation, the lighting plan has good light levels with excellent uniformity. The lighting was designed to ensure safe movement of people and vehicles. All light fixtures are aimed downward, cutoff style fixtures. And lighting was designed to minimize any spillage onto adjacent residential properties. There is none. So the lighting is compliant with the land use ordinance. That concludes the lighting testimony. I'm going to pull up a rendered landscape plan now. This will be A6.
Yes.
And this is the same sheet 7 that was submitted with color on it, dated September 29, 2023. So a few of the key objectives of the landscape plan: performed a site analysis and reviewed the existing vegetation. I wanted to provide a sense of entry along West Northfield Road and tie it into the existing neighborhood, to enhance the stormwater management areas and provide plantings and bufferings for the adjacent residential uses. For the site analysis, evaluate existing conditions, One of the first things I always do whenever I have a project is to go out and walk the site and become familiar with the area and the site itself. And then the next step is typically to evaluate the existing vegetation, which I did. I prepared a tree inventory, which is on the demolition plan, I believe. Wanted to consider development options and saving existing trees where we possibly could. I'd like to just touch on the existing tree inventory. A few key statistics that I wanted to just represent. We have a total of 78 trees on site which were inventoried. Of those, 19 were in very poor condition, which would be exempt from tree replacements. That's 24%. And of those 19, 3 were completely dead. 39 trees, or 50% of the trees, were what I would consider to be poor condition, which puts 58 trees, or 74%, in the very poor condition category. We have 78 trees on site, of which 37 are less than 10-inch diameter breast height. That's about half, about 49%. And we have 79 trees, of which 25 are alien invasive species. I believe there are 22 Norway maples, as well as 3 calorie pears. So 33 of the trees are alien invasive species. So whenever we look at this, we want to try to look to see which trees have value that we'd like to try to save if we are able to, and which trees we are not worth saving or not worth trying to keep or work around. Most of the trees that were adjacent to 19 Collins Terrace are going to remain. They're behind a fence that's on the neighbor's side of the fence. There are a couple of trees that are in poor condition that we're going to take care of removing, but other than that, the balance of those trees are going to remain. There's no work beyond the existing pavement area. There's going to be no disturbance over there. To address the tree removals adjacent to 22 West Harrison Place, which is this area here, wrapping around the back corner, on the south side of West Harrison, as well as on the east side of that corner. We have 17 trees are scheduled for removal. Of the 17, 10 of them are alien invasives. They're Norway maples. That's 58%. There are 5 trees in very poor condition, which is 29%, and the other 12 trees are categorized in poor condition. From what I remember, out walking in the field doing the evaluation from that day, there's an existing slope in that area, and many of the trees had a surplus of surface roots, and there was a bit of erosion. It just wasn't a condition that was very conducive to try to keep those trees in that area. And if we would have tried to do any kind of a buffer planting in that area, we would have had such disturbance of the root zones that we probably would have compromised the trees anyway. So I took a look at the tree replacement requirements per Livingston ordinance, and for the trees that were removed along the 22 West Harrison property line, according to the Livingston tree ordinance, there'd be 14 replacement trees required for that area. And we are proposing 31 replacement trees in that same area, adjacent to 22 West Harrison Place, of which there are 28 evergreen trees proposed, as well as 5 shade trees proposed. To address the tree removals along West Harrison Place, which is the balance of the west side of the property along the street, there are 15 trees that are scheduled for removal. There are 3 Norway maples, alien invasives, it's 20%, 1 elm, 1 oak, 8 red maples, 2 trees that are dead that I couldn't identify, 4 trees in very poor condition, 26%, and 7 trees in poor condition, which is 46%. And again, if I looked at the matrix of the trees in very poor condition or poor condition, it equates to about 72% of the trees in that area. I did the same thing where I looked at the Livingston tree replacement ordinance for the trees that we were removing in that area, and there are 20 replacement trees required in that area, and we're proposing 41 replacement trees. And of those 41 trees, we have 34 evergreen trees and the 7 deciduous street trees, the Japanese tree lilac. As you can see, the replacements provided in both of these areas are more than double what the township requirements would be for tree replacements in these areas. The total tree replacement requirement was calculated to be 70 trees, and we're proposing a total of 101 trees throughout the site, which is 1.44 times what's required by the tree replacement ordinance. To talk about the design, we wanted to have some sense of place along Northfield Road. We created an entry plaza at the West Northfield Road entrance. There is an existing row of London plane trees. As part of this work, we had to take a couple out. We're going to be replacing them in kind. We have some new Zelkova trees proposed along the north side of the building, along Collins Terrace. We have decorative street lights I spoke of earlier along Collins Terrace to match the streetscape along West Northfield Road. And we will consult with the bid to coordinate any streetscape materials or any design intent that they'd like for us to do along the West Northfield streetscape. Another stated design objective was to enhance the stormwater management area. To the west of the parking lot, if you remember, Mike has testified, we have a bioswale. The bioswale is going to be planted with perennials, native perennials, and ornamental grasses to help filter and purify the runoff. And this will be planted consistent with the New Jersey DEP best management practices and green infrastructure recommendations.
Before we move on.
I'm gonna
I think
pull the
we need to
landscape
mark that
plan
as,
back up.
A6.
We did.
I have another exhibit that I'm going to bring up now. It's the site section, and we'll call that A7.
I just described that.
Yep. So these are site sections. The one on the top is the site section through the corner of the parking lot and 22 West Northfield. I'm sorry, 22 West Harrison Place. And the bottom one is the site section across West Harrison Place. The drawing's SS1, and it's dated September 29th, 2023. I'm going to zoom in a little bit on the 22 West Harrison first, so we can get a better look at it. So if we start on the right, that's the closest parking space, which again is, let me get the number right, I think 31.6 feet off. (31.6 feet off the property line. We go from the parking lot up to curb, and then we have the new parking lot tree. What's shown behind it is the nearest light pole. I have it erroneously labeled and drawn because we reduced it to 12 feet, so it's actually 2 feet lower than what's shown on the section here. And the oak tree adjacent to the parking lot. Then we have the 6-foot-high fence on the inside of the plantings. And then we have a double row of arborvitae on a slightly elevated berm. And then we have the wall, and then we have the property line 3 feet off the wall, and then the neighboring house and property.
Mr. Conway, you are planting trees. Do you here show the height of the tree as planted or at some point in the future?
So the sections are done as I've done every other section I've been before the board with. It's about a 5 to 10 year projection is what we're showing.
Thank you.
And this is the section through West Harrison Place. If we start on the right-hand side, those would be the residences across the street. And then you can see the front yard up to the property line, which is a little bit further to the left. Then it's the right-of-way with the street in the center. 2 cars are shown there. The tree adjacent to the curb would be the Japanese tree lilac. The property line is about 5 feet past that. Then we have the arborvitae shown with the fence behind it, the bioswale shown with the planting, the 14-foot parking lot light. Then we have the parking lot shown, the trees shown behind the cars on where the cars are double loaded. Those would be the trees that would be on the north side or on the other side of the parking lot. And then the trees to the left are shown at the parking lot end islands, and the parking lot lights are also in those end islands. So we have, to buffer the adjacent residential uses, we have a 6-foot-high solid PVC screen fence along the entire residential frontage and along West Harrison Place. The color for that fence will be an earth tone. In addition to the fence, wherever there's no existing buffer, along the residential frontages, a new evergreen buffer is proposed. This includes the entirety of the West Harrison Place frontage. And ivory silk tree lilacs are proposed as street trees along West Harrison Place. I'm going to put the landscape rendering back up just to kind of go through that all one more time on the plan view so that it's clear.
And that's what we previously marked as A6, correct?
Correct. So to recap, along the 19-column terrace, largely existing trees to remain in that area. We have a new tree proposed at the beginning of the parking lot. We have a double row of evergreens around the back, to a single row, back to a staggered double row as you get closer to the street. We provided some shade trees along that area also, just to the south of 22 West Harrison Place. As we go down the West Harrison Place line on the street side of the fence, we have a single row of green giant arborvitaes, and then we have, I believe it's 7 Japanese tree lilac, ivory silk tree lilacs for street trees over there. We have 2 trees in each of the end islands in the parking lot, and in the center island by where the handicap parking is, we have some additional tree planting. To recap, tree removal and replacement, we have 78 existing trees on site, 64 are scheduled to be removed. There's a 70 tree replacement requirement. For what we're proposing 101 replacement trees. That's 35 shade or deciduous trees and 66 evergreen trees. We also looked at the ordinance, section 170-94, where there's to be 1 tree planted for every 6,000 square feet of paved area. We have approximately 85,225 square feet of paved area, parking lot, and that's at 1 per 6,000. It gives us 14 trees minimum required in the parking lot. We're proposing 20. So we've met or exceeded all of the requirements. We listened to what the neighbors said. We tried to be responsive and proactive to their concerns. That concludes my testimony. I'm happy to answer any additional questions that you may have.
Any questions?
I have a question. The plantings that are outside of the fence, the 6-foot fence, you say, are they going to put sprinklers there, or how do you maintain the arborvitaes? I know that's not easy to do, because it'll be outside of that big fence.
Again, they could be watered with gator bags. They make the gator bags flat ones for the evergreen trees if they choose to do that. I don't know if there's been an irrigation system discussed or not. There's been no discussion with me about it. But I'm sure that they'll care for them.
That's my concern, because they're not easy to take care of if you're not watering them. Thank you.
Thank you. We could also specify wetting agents be added to the soils, something like a Terrasorb or something along those lines. They're like a polymeric granule. It's the same kind of idea what's in the diaper, that they're small. When they get wet, they swell up and expand. So for a tree, what they do is they swell up and expand, and they hold the moisture, so the tree roots can pull the water out of them. We've had good success with that also, so maybe a combination of that. I could add that to our specifications and the gator bags.
You mentioned that one of the poles was less than the 18 feet?
No, we have quite a few poles less than 18 feet. All of the
What
D
will the height
fixtures,
be of the lower, what will the height be of the lower poles?
so the lower poles, all of the D fixtures, which are along the residential periphery, are 14 feet. And then we have the 1A pole that's going to be 12 feet. That's the one that's nearest to the corner.
Mr. Conway, I have a issue which I'll ask you to put your planner hat on for, but it's possible that we'll also have to ask Mr. Jano to give his thoughts about it, and maybe Mr. Lanzafama as well. You talked about the driveway, what you describe as a driveway, at the 20-foot width, where ordinarily it would be 24. If it's a drive aisle, it has to be 24. If it's a driveway, it could be 20. So are we justified in saying in text that it's a driveway? Or do we have to grant a variance because we're reducing an aisle width?
I will, of course, defer to Mr. Lanzafama for further comment, but in our estimation, based upon our discussions, the 24-foot would be for where it's servicing parking, because these are actually loops that are really not serving cars backing up. That was how we interpreted the driveway. I don't know, what Mike, I think he's going to say,
Well, you're the one who's under oath now,
yep.
but we'll need more input on it.
We'll get more input.
I
We'll get
know
more
how
input
I would
from
like
Mr.
to be able to
Lanzafama.
interpret it, but I'm not a
Right.
professional.
Yeah, in my estimation, we interpret that as a driveway.
Yeah, please.
Mr. Klein, you
Yeah.
are somebody who's welcome to speak, yes.
Pardon me?
Yes, indeed,
Yeah,
since you
thank you.
trade my name.
Lee Klein, the traffic engineer for the board. I guess the only concern I might have is if two cars are passing each other on that 20-foot wide turn, that they can make that pass. So I hate to ask you to make another turning template, but we may need another turning template.
We have a traffic engineer here tonight and a civil engineer here tonight. I'm sure that they can opine
All right,
in more detail than I can.
thank you.
Any other questions from the board or from the board's professionals?
You mentioned that there was a reduction of one parking space. I assume some point somebody's going to testify as to the total number of parking spaces and whether a variance is
That
required
is
and so on.
correct. Mr. Lanzafama will when we bring him back up with planning and wrap up.
I have a question about the very first parking space in from Collins Terrace. Can you tell me what the setback of that parking space is? Because it is a specific requirement in the code. And I'll give you a hint. Because you're on a corner, that's considered to be a front yard. And the front yard setback requirement is 10 feet. The parking setback is 1/2 the front yard setback. So the minimum setback is 5 feet. We just have to know whether or not you've met that.
I don't know if it's dimensioned on the site plan. I'll check it. It's quicker to do the paper than it is to here. We do not have it dimensioned, but I can scale it.
Mr. Lanzafama is coming to your rescue.
Ms. Lepsey?
So we're scaling at 8 feet.
That does clear it up. Thank you very much.
Any other questions from the board or from the board's professionals? Any questions from members of the public as to this witness and this witness's testimony? Yes, please. Name and address for the record, please.
My name is Andrew Cubillos, Cubillos, at 22 West Harrison Place. And I'm not being represented.
Go ahead.
So my first question is, just to clarify, how many trees are being chopped down?
64.
64. And then along the 22 West Harrison Place property, because you indicated that there were going to be trees chopped down. So if that space is not planned for additional parking spaces, why are those trees being chopped down?
So the trees are being removed to be able to provide the ability to develop the rest of the parking lot, as well as to do the grading that's required to go from the parking lot to your house. As you know, there's a pretty steep uneven slope over there right now. And if we would try to introduce any kind of an evergreen buffer in there, we would end up damaging the root systems of the existing trees there so profoundly that they would probably, the new trees we plant wouldn't be successful, and the existing trees that we were trying to preserve wouldn't be well preserved. So, we made a decision what we thought would be the best thing to do for everybody involved, which would be to develop the property appropriately and provide new replacement plantings.
And then what defines a tree as poor condition?
So there's a bunch of contingencies. I could look at, looking at the tree inventory, which is on the demolition plan, and I'll just read off a few of the comments that I have. Here's one, it's tree number 7. It's a large old wound. Here's tree number 11. It's a multi-stem entangled in a fence. Here's a tree that's poor. It's high-branched and thin. It's a cedar tree. Rotten with dieback, excessive lean. A tree that's malformed. A tree that's dead. Rotten trunk cavities. So basically, it's a tree, and again, when I walked between the fence and your property along that slope there, many of those trees had a proliferation of surface roots, and it seemed like there was erosion that had transpired over there over history. So those trees were really not in a really good condition. You can't put soil back on top of those roots, then you would end up endangering the tree. So there was a bunch of factors that were at play for those trees in those conditions.
And then for the trees that you plan on planting alongside our property, what is the max mature height of those trees, or what are they capable of reaching?
The green giant arborvitaes, probably in the neighborhood of 30 to 40 feet would be a reasonable expectation in a, definable time span of 25 years. I believe we have them proposed at 7 to 8 feet. What we have them shown at in the section is probably, I believe, 14 feet, which is about what we expect to be a 5-year projection.
5-year.
5 to 10-year projection.
And you said it would take about 20 to 25 years to reach.
To reach the 30 to 40 foot height, probably. That'd probably be pretty close to the ultimate size I would expect them to get.
And then what about for like 20 to 25 feet around there? How long would you say that would take?
I'm sorry, I missed that.
For it to reach about 20 to 25 feet, how long do you think?
20 to 25 feet tall. So the way I evaluate the growth on the trees, the first year after transplanting, I don't expect any growth. The second year after transplanting, probably in the neighborhood of 1 foot of growth. And then once the trees become established and start to grow for the next 10 years or so, I think you could probably expect between 1 foot and 2 feet of growth per year. So if you were looking to do 20 feet, I think it would be conservative to say 10 to 15 years.
15 years. As for the, and And do you know what the height of the trees that are currently there?
I do not. From what I remember, there were some taller, there was a bunch of trees that were crowded, and typically when the trees become crowded, they become extraordinarily tall and narrow for their size, for their trunk diameter.
So for the trees that are along along our property line on the side, would you say that those are at least like 30 feet tall?
I
your
didn't really measure them. I was more focused on the health condition and the root zone. From what I recall, they were all generally high branched. I don't believe there were any evergreen trees along your sideline.
And then what is the plan for trees that don't make it? So any trees that are growing, they die. What is the plan for
Yeah,
that?
I believe a standard condition, Mr. Klein, I'm sure could help me out with this, but is it a 3-year guarantee?
A tree which dies within 3 years has to be replaced at that height. If a tree dies after 3 years, it has to be replaced at the height it would have had at 3 years.
Okay. And then for the Norway maple species, you said
Correct.
that's an invasive species.
Correct.
Is there any detriment to having that in the neighborhood?
Absolutely. So the Norway maples, like many other alien invasives, they came here either as ornamental horticulture or came here accidentally. And what makes them troublesome and worrisome is that they outcompete the native species. So the Norway maples that are growing along your property line, they were never planted. They were just wild trees that grew up and outcompeted the native species to grow where they are right now. So the more alien invasive trees there are and plants there are, the more they're going to proliferate in places that they don't belong.
And would you say that because that row of trees is kind of like isolated because between, our property and the parking lot, would you say that they pose any threat because if they're isolated, between a parking lot and then a backyard?
Pose any threat to?
In terms of like spreading, if it's just a parking lot on one side versus
They certainly do. So maple trees, their leaves are carried in what are called samaras. And I don't know about you, but when we were kids, we used to stick them on our noses. And basically what they do is they spin like a helicopter in the wind. So they're wind-blown and carried, pretty good distances. So they're able to, proliferate. And if they're picked up by a street sweeper or a car or driven someplace else, they're trouble.
And then for this question, I don't know if this is a question that you would be able to answer or Mr. Alonzo Vaughn would be able to answer because it pertains kind of to both the trees and the bioswale. So when the stormwater study was performed, did that take into account that all of those trees would be cut down that would be absorbing the water?
Yeah, the trees are not impactful, and those trees would not be impactful to the design of the bioswale because the bioswale is for the surface runoff from the parking lot, and those trees would not be dealing with any of that surface runoff.
Gotcha. I'm just doing one final check. And those are all the questions that I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have one more question. On the row of evergreens that you're planting, I don't think we discussed the other shading trees that were being planted. It seems like there's shading trees within the row of the green giants,
Correct.
correct?
There are, kind of hard for me to read the. Sorry for that. PDF's a little bit blurry. All of the trees in that area are going to be Quercus bicolor, which is a swamp white oak, which is a native plant.
How
How tall?
How tall?
They're going to probably, in a natural environment, probably get to between 50 and 60 feet tall. They're a significant shade tree.
And they're
There are 5 of them adjacent to 22 West Harrison. Thank you.
I have a quick question. Of the 62 that 64 you're removing, how many of those are dead or not viable? I think you mentioned it before, but
I did. So of the 78 trees we have total, 19 are in very poor condition or not viable. So that would be 19 of 68, about a third, a little bit less than a third.
Any other questions from members of the public? Yes. Sure. Anything that the witness testified about? Yeah, please come up, name and address, please.
Hi, Bonnie Dostalik at 61 Collinwood Avenue. I wanted to ask about the lighting. Oh, I'm sorry? Oh, Dostalik. Welcome. I wanted to ask about the lighting. Will they be on timers to go off at a certain time at night?
So typically, for a project such as this, what we would recommend would be for them to be at full power during business hours and then have a reduced, we could probably do a 50% reduction for off hours. So there's still some safety and security, but they would be maybe at half power for the overnight hours.
And the other question I had was, not everybody owns an SUV. I own a car, and my vision, a sight of vision when I'm driving is low to the ground. And there are plants right now outside of, on Collins Terrace, on the corner of Collins Terrace and Northfield. And they block the line of sight if you're in a lower vehicle. Will you be planting anything that's going to be near the corner blocking the line of sight? Because that's a treacherous corner. People love to zip in and out, and people don't always look to see who's zipping in and out.
So one of the things that was asked for us was to provide site triangles on all of our plans. And there's no plantings in the site triangles that are under 8 feet or above 18 inches. I believe the site triangles are free of any plantings.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I just had one more question.
Yes.
Where those trees we just talked about, the 5 trees, I see that, is that grass going to stay there? Is that a grassy area, the green that I'm seeing?
Yeah,
The light
what's
green?
typically shown as green on the plans is either going to be lawn area or that's going to be a mulch bed as appropriate around the plantings.
Okay, thank you.
Hello. I'm attorney Melissa Cianci, representing about a dozen residents that could not be here tonight.
I know last time you were here, we had asked for a letter to be sent as to
Yes.
the residents that you represent, and we did not get them.
Would you like that on the record right now?
Please. If we can have your office address and the residents that you represent. And then if you could follow it up with a letter, that would be great to the planning board office.
Sure. So, William Nagara.
Okay, if you can go through those, who are they? William,
Nagara.
how do you spell that?
Nigara.
And address?
27 Collinwood Avenue.
Okay.
Carol Nagara. Same address. Allison Greenspan. Allison. 44 Collinwood Avenue. John Mignone.
How do you spell that?
Mignone.
Address?
33 Collinwood Avenue. Aditi Sethi,
Yeah, can you spell that, please?
the first and last name.
Yeah, please.
Adtiya, last name Sethi, Sethi.
Say, what was that again?
Sethi.
Okay. And the address?
It's at 52 Collinwood. And Ritu Gupta at 52 Collinwood.
62?
52.
52?
Gupta, Gupta. Richu. Dorothy and Walter Joyce at 58 Collinwood. Anne Celebri at 27 West Harrison Place. Celebre.
Anybody else?
That's it.
Okay, and if you can just follow that up, please, with a letter to Ms. Hollis at the Planning Board office.
Hi, Mr. Conway.
Hello.
So I wanted to ask a couple of questions. You said 19 of the trees are not viable, dead, or in poor condition. How many of those were actually dead?
3.
3. And the rest being in poor condition, those allow them to be exempt from replacement, is that correct?
The ones that I categorize as very poor are ones that are really not sustainable. There may be some other elements of decline, decay, or other things that make them not suitable for keeping them.
So that means they are exempt from the replacement?
Correct.
Okay. And I saw on your demolition plan, there's over 10 different types of trees that are being removed. Will there be over 10 different types of trees replanted on the property?
I believe there's 8 in the plant list that I see right now. 8.
Would there be a way to increase the diversification of the trees to?
I could certainly look at trying to do that, for sure.
Okay. Will there be any trees that are over the bioswale area?
No.
No. Is there a reason why there couldn't be any trees over there?
So we have some underground storage underneath the bioswale, and the trees on top of that would be troublesome for the underground storage that we have there.
Are there any trees that could be on top, like birch trees with lower roots that may not disturb the
No,
bioswale?
There's not, the way we have the bioswale set up, there aren't any trees. If there were, we would have put them there.
Okay. I believe you proposed 25 shade trees and 57 evergreen trees, correct?
I think there was 30. Let me make sure I get the number right. 35 shade and deciduous trees. That includes the tree lilacs, which are kind of smaller stature, so I wouldn't necessarily call them shade trees. And then 66 evergreen trees.
Okay. Are the 66 evergreen trees all of the same species, or will they be varying?
There are 3 different species that we're proposing. Norway spruce, which is it's a non-native, but it's not invasive. We're proposing green giant arborvitae, which is a native, and we're proposing Nellie Stevens holly, which is a hybrid holly.
Are there any other ones that you could add in to create some variety? Because we, as residents, are very worried about the visual aspects of losing the natural barrier that really separates the commercial properties from all of the residential homes.
I will certainly evaluate and see if I could add some diversity to the evergreen buffers.
And could you also do the same for the shade trees as well?
I already agreed to that, but certainly,
Okay.
I'd be happy to.
And for the evergreen trees, how tall are they when they're planted on the property?
They're going to be planted at 7 to 8 feet, which is, the ordinance requires 6 to 8 feet, so we're 7 to 8.
Okay. And then I believe you said within the first year, you don't expect them to grow.
Correct. Usually the first year, the trees are just getting acclimatized to their new environment. The root growth is what occurs.
And within the second to third year, you expect less than 5 feet of growth, correct?
Correct.
And is that the same for the shade trees?
The shade trees are going to be significantly larger than the evergreen trees. The shade trees are probably going to be in the neighborhood of, the tree lilacs would probably be 12 feet approximately. The oaks and the other trees are probably going to be more like 14 to 16
Okay.
feet tall. So they're going to be, considerably taller
That's when they're planted.
at planting.
And the same as within the first year, no growth,
Correct.
and within year 2 or 3, about how much do we expect the shade trees to be growing?
I would use the same parameters. I would expect to between maybe the second year, potentially about a foot of growth, and then thereafter between a foot to 2 foot of growth per year, depending upon, what they're doing, what kind of year we're having, et cetera, et cetera.
I believe it was mentioned that the tree warranty is 3 years, but I guess expectation is that it may not grow within those 3 years. Is there something that we could do to make sure that if the tree isn't growing within 3 years and it is replaced after the 3 years, could we extend the warranty on this, in this area that gives us a little more
Typically,
space
if a
here?
tree is going to die after planting, it typically dies pretty soon thereafter. I would say, if it were on the neighborhood of less than 5%, would be expected to potentially be need replacement. After 2 or 3 years, I would expect that number to be, way less than 1%. So if they're able to survive the first year and the transplant, typically they're going to be good, unless there's something that happens to it, either a mechanical or some other kind of a failure, some kind of an insect invasion or something, a disease that causes a failure. But typically, once the trees are planted for the first year and acclimatized, typically they don't really die.
Okay. You mentioned that if something does happen, like, infestation or otherwise, those trees, will they get replaced on the property, or are they just torn out?
So as I understand it, the landscape plan is part of the condition of approval, and it needs to be maintained as part of that in order to keep the approvals valid.
Okay. That's all my questions for you. Thank you, Mr. Conway.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For the benefit of everybody who's concerned about replacement of trees, we have, if we approve an application, a standard set of conditions that have to be complied with by the developer. We have a provision in regard to tree replacement. Basically, what it says is if a tree dies within the current or next planting season, it has to be replaced in kind at the size that it should have reached when it died. if it dies within 3 years, it has to be replaced at the size at which it died. If it dies after 3 years, it has to be replaced at a size that equals the size that it had 3 years after planting. So you'll always have a tree that will meet that 3-year requirement no matter when it dies. There's always opportunity for continued growth when the replacement takes place. But that only applies if we approve an application.
Thank you, Peter. Any other questions from the board or from the public? Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah, our next witness is going to be our traffic engineer.
Yes, sir.
First thing, I'm not sure.
Name and address for the record,
My name
please.
is Weilin, W-E-I-L-I-N. I live in 19 Cornston. Okay. 19 Cornston.
Weilin, correct?
Right. First thing is, can I ask you about EV charge, the questions? Because last time I mentioned you put like 10 to 12 EV charge by my house. So I ask you just remove that to someplace else because they have a potential risk.
Yeah, we relocated the EV chargers. They're no longer by your house.
No longer. Okay.
You can point them out, Brian.
They're located in the, on this island here where the handicap parking is, as well as by the dumpster, the relocated dumpster.
You move the dumpster away too?
We moved the dumpster further away. It's
Yeah,
25 feet.
Yeah, appreciate it. Okay. And trees in by my house, that one, I believe that 1 or 2 is down already, right?
Correct.
So you gotta cut it down
Correct.
and you replace a new tree or not?
In the area by your house, it's very densely planted. So if we're able to plant new trees, we will. Near the corner of the property, we have a new tree proposed. But in the area behind your fence, where the trees are very densely planted, it's going to be very difficult to try to get any new plantings in there. The same conversation that I had previously, that if we try to get in there to introduce a new tree, we're going to do such significant damage to the tree roots that are there that we may end up providing more damage, causing more damage than we're going to be doing. And then the new tree is going to have to try to outcompete the old trees for the moisture and the nutrients in the soil. It usually ends up just becoming a bad scenario to try to do that.
Okay. So what about the fence? Now your fence and my fence is very close to each other. If you put a
Correct.
new fence, so I want to know how many feet from the distance from my fence.
I don't know whether we have a distance specified. We're going to keep it no less than 2 or 3 feet off the curb. We're probably going to put them pretty close to adjacent, I would think.
So how many feet like?
Right up against it.
Just remain now?
I'm sorry?
Now it's very close. So you put a new fence, just keep the same by my fence?
Correct. It'll be a solid fence, though, so you'll have a solid buffer to a height of 6 feet, 100%.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from members of the public?
Good evening. My name is Edward Mina. I'm a resident of 19 West Harrison Place. Last name is Mina.
What was your address again? I'm sorry.
19 West Harrison
19?
Place. Yes, the house on the cul-de-sac. Thank you for your explanation. I just had a couple of questions. Sorry, this has an echo. Specifically on the lighting conditions on the parking lot. So I was hoping you can just go into a little bit more detail about how those were calculated in terms of, are there any calculations with regard if this is being projected off of trees, off of the fence, or is this just direct lighting onto the surface of the parking lot? And is there a certain radius associated with how far that light extends?
So the fixtures that we're using are LED fixtures. The DSX Zero fixtures have individually aimed LEDs. So it's a fixture that's mounted with all the LEDs oriented downward. All of the light poles along West Harrison are all going to be 14-foot mounting height. And those LEDs are all oriented in such a way that they're shining away from your house, away from West Harrison Place. The fixtures that we're proposing along that line of the parking lot are the DSX Zero BLC fixtures, and the BLC stands for backlight control. So what that does is all of the light is oriented forward, none of the light is oriented backwards. The light cutoff, where the light shines onto the ground, is going to be essentially the base of the pole, and there won't be any light beyond it. It's a wonderful, wonderful fixture for being able to put fixtures that are only pushing the light forward with no spillage backwards.
Okay, and so all the numbers then is it safe to say they're all kind of computed as if there's nothing on the surface except for just the parking lot, so no trees, cars, or anything else?
Well, there won't be any trees along the West Harrison Place. Again, all of the lights are shining downward. And the cars are going to be below the 6-foot-high solid fence, as well as the whatever evergreen buffer there is there. So I don't think that there's going to be light reflecting off of the cars.
Okay. And then as a follow-up question, so I noticed there was a lighting fixture when you had the cross-sectional diagram that included West Harrison Street, as well as the bioswale, and then the parking lot.
Would you like for me to pull it?
Yes, if
drawing
you
up?
could, so everyone could see.
And this is SS1, which is A7.
You don't mind blowing up the second picture on the bottom?
You're taxing my ability here.
I know these CAD drawings have a lot of detail. So my first question is, just because of the tendency of bioswales to kind of have flooding, and as a result there's mosquitoes, is there any reason why there's going to be a light fixture that close to it, which would kind of increase the likelihood of that happening?
The bioswale?
Yes.
So I believe Mike testified to it at the last meeting that the bioswale is going to be drained within 72 hours, and that's typically the breeding rate for mosquitoes. So long as the bioswale functions as designed, there shouldn't be any issue with mosquitoes. There should be no standing water.
I guess my question is more specifically, why is there a light fixture that's that close to it? Could it be possible that it could be pushed backwards, or is there a reason that it needs to be that close to it?
Again, as I explained before, the way the light fixtures are designed is they're designed to be put with their backs to the sensitive areas so that their lights are projecting forward. If we were to put the lights further away, there'd be more chance for spillage from the lights projecting out. So by putting the lights with the back facing the West Harrison Place, what we're doing is we're providing a line where no light's going past it. If the light's projecting forward, it's not a straight line, it becomes more of an arc or a curve. And then if you were to look towards the light fixtures, you may see light shining towards you. These lights are going to all be shining away.
Okay, so you're saying even if that backwards, the very furthermost light that's closest to the West Harrison Street, even if it was pushed forward away from the street, it would cause more spillage of light towards the homes?
If it were oriented the same way and pushed further away from the street, it wouldn't light the parking lot.
Okay.
It's basically right at the edge. You could take a drive by the facility on Northfield, the existing one. It's the older technology of these lights without the backlight control, and the cutoff is essentially a couple of feet off the back of the curb at the parking lot, and it is completely black beyond it.
Okay.
These are the best options to accomplish being respectful for all of our neighbors, and the way the lights are laid out is absolutely positively the best I could do for you.
Okay. And then I guess my final question is, so you mentioned the trees will be around 7 to 8 feet. And so with that fence diagram, which I'm guessing is about 6 feet, so they should just be maybe a little bit taller than that initially.
Correct.
would it be possible to have considerations for larger trees to be put that would potentially block any potential for any spillage? Because right now we have, trees that are 30, 40, 50 feet tall that are blocking any spillage. And so now we're going to have that exposure with 7 to 8 foot trees. And
So the trees that are there now are deciduous and high branched. So there really isn't very much at all between, say, 0 and 10 or 15 feet. If we were to plant larger trees, and I know I talked to somebody about it, I don't know if it was a conversation with you at our meeting on the 30th or it was after the meeting, the 7 to 8 foot trees are really the sweet spot in terms of getting a tree that has some significant biomass to be able to recover from transplant. If we start to get bigger trees, they recover more slowly from transplant. So instead of it being a year of recovery and then a year of growth, you may end up having 2 years of recovery or a longer recovery time and then a slower growth spurt thereafter. So from my perspective, this is the best option that we could do for you, to provide the ability in a shorter period of time to get a larger tree. Because I think that the 7 to 8 footers will ultimately surpass a larger tree because I think they're going to react more favorably to the transplant.
but that would be over a longer time period.
I would say within a 5-year period, a 3 to 5 year period. And I've planted all different sizes in my career. And I can tell you from experience, that's what I would do.
Sure. But if we wanted to accelerate that 5-year period.
I don't think you would, that's what I'm trying to explain. I don't think you would accelerate it. I think that in a 5-year period, the 7 to 8 foot trees are going to outperform, say, an 8 to 10 foot tree.
In terms of final growth.
In terms of where they are growth-wise within that 5-year period.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other members of the public? Seeing none? Okay, why don't we move on then?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
This time, we're going to call the Harold Maltz.
Just a second.
Mr. Maltz, raise your right hand, please. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Mr. Maltz, can you please provide the board with an overview of your educational, professional background and licenses you hold?
Yes, I'm a principal of the firm of Hamill Associates located in West Orange, New Jersey. I hold a Bachelor of Science and a Master of Science in Civil Engineering from the Newark College of Engineering. I also hold a Master of Science in Environmental Engineering from the New Jersey Institute of Technology. I've been a full-time transportation consultant specializing in traffic and highway engineering for the past 54 years. I'm a licensed professional engineer by test in the state of New Jersey for the past 49 years, and my license is in good standing. I also hold licenses in other adjoining states. I've also served as an adjunct on the faculty of the New Jersey Institute of Technology, whom I've taught a course in highway engineering, both on campus as well as to employees of the New Jersey DOT at their Ewing, Maine facility. I've appeared more than 1,000 times in front of municipal boards. In fact, most of my work now is representing municipal boards in New Jersey. And in fact, I've appeared many, many times, as many of you know, before this board.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Any objection? Thank you very much.
Mr. Maltz, you've undertaken traffic studies, prepared a traffic study report, various supplements for this proposed project. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Why don't you please provide the board with an overview of your findings?
Right. The 2 reports I provided was, first, the traffic study was dated June 1st, 2023, and then there was an addendum that was prepared dated August 14, 2023, which responded to comments made by the board's traffic engineer, Mr. Lee Klein. Mr. Lanzafama had already described the proposed project, so I'm not going to go through all of that again. I would just like to note that there were some changes to my first report, the June 1st report, since it was submitted. The original report said there were 237 spaces. It was subsequently reduced to 230, and this evening it's reduced to 229 spaces. In addition, the original report, both side drives permitted the drive on Collins Terrace, permitted all lefts and rights in and out, and the egress drive to the one-way egress only drive to Northfield, in my report, allowed both lefts and rights out. In the subsequent addendum, there were two analyses that were done. One responded to Mr. Klein's comment about eliminating the left turn out of the Northfield Drive, and that was done. And then there was a comment made at the track meeting about eliminating the left turn out of the drive to Collins, and that was done. So I have two alternate analyses that are in the addendum report. Consequently, the analysis of capacity that's in the original June 1st report, that does not reflect those turn restrictions. So I'm going to identify from the addendum what the revised capacity analysis is. The firm was retained to determine the traffic impacts of the project at the intersection of West Northfield Road and Collins Terrace, and each of the site drives with Collins as well as West Northfield Road, and do a comparative trip generation between the proposed use and the previous fitness center use. The existing conditions were previously described in the area by Mr. Lanzafama. I'm just going to note some of the information about the locals roadways in the study area. West Northfield Road, which the project fronts on, is a county road, number 508. And in my report, it's been called an east-west roadway. However, west of Livingston Avenue intersection, it proceeds in a northwest-southeast direction, extending up in a straight line to the Route 10 circle. Within the site vicinity, Northfield has 2 lanes in each direction. It's on a straight and level alignment. And west of Collins, the intersection, the roadway is 40 feet wide. East of Collins, Northfield widens to at least 48 feet to provide the beginning of an eastbound paint-striped left turn lane at the eastbound approach of the Livingston Avenue signal. The speed limit is 30 miles an hour. However, several hundred feet west of the Collins intersection, the speed goes up, posted to 40 miles an hour. Sidewalks are present along most of each side of the road, and no stopping or standing is posted along each curb line. And the DOT classifies Northfield in this area as a principal arterial roadway. Collins Terrace is a municipal roadway. It's 2 lanes, 1 lane in each direction. It goes southwest from a stop T intersection with Northfield across the site drive on that roadway, where it makes a small radius curve to take a westerly alignment for a short distance, and then turns, I would say, south to Collinwood Avenue, ultimately ending at Hobart Gap Road. It's 25 miles per hour, 30-foot width, and it's no stopping or standing on Collins Terrace. So in terms of progressing the study, in terms of data collection and existing traffic, I obtained the site plans and statistics from the site engineer and the applicant for the project. The New Jersey Department of Transportation annual growth rates were obtained for this area, which is 1% per year annual growth, and it was applied to the build-out year, which was identified to me as 2024. I performed a field inventory of the area. By that I mean looked at the traffic control, lane widths, lane arrangements, horizontal, vertical, any conditions that pertain, which I previously described. And in addition, there was one other development nearby that I obtained a traffic report for, and that's mixed-use development at the northeast corner of Livingston and Northfield, which is currently under construction, although it looks like it's not moving for a while. But I did obtain the report so that I can include the traffic projections that were assigned through our study area in our report. I supplemented all the foregoing with traffic counts that I performed myself of the West Northfield and Collins intersection, as well as the Collins and Sight Drive intersection, and also the ingress, currently the ingress drive from Northfield into the property. The Collins intersection with Northfield was performed on Thursday, February 9th, 2023, from 7 to 9 a.m. and 4 to 6 p.m., and the driveways were performed on Tuesday, February 14th, 2023, also from 7 to 9 a.m. and 4 to 6 p.m. Both days were normal business days. Schools were in-person normal session, and weather conditions were good, and there were no roadway closures. The peak hours were identified as 7:30 to 8:30 in the morning and 4:45 to 5:45 in the evening. And there's an exhibit in the report which identifies the 2024 existing traffic, which is the no build. That includes the 1% per year growth rate on all the existing traffic, as well as the traffic identified from the mixed-use project that I noted by the Livingston and Northfield intersection. In terms of what was identified in the AM peak hour, 7:30 to 8:30, Northfield at the site frontage, there were 1,336 cars on Northfield two-way, with 741 westbound, 595 eastbound. Westbound was the heavier direction. Traffic was platooned in each direction due to signals that exist at Livingston Avenue as well as Hillside Avenue. What I mean as platooned, and I've described this to the board before, the traffic light, when it goes red, breaks the flow of traffic on the particular roadway receiving the red. What that does, it creates platoons of traffic flow, but it enforces gaps in the flow. And the gaps are beneficial to side road traffic, either from a street or a driveway entering the roadway, because instead of just having random traffic up and down the street with no enforced gaps, now you do, and with longer gaps, you have more opportunity to get out from the side roads. And traffic flow on Northfield in this area was identified as free-flowing at all times. At Collins Terrace, at the Northfield intersection, there were 27 inbound vehicles and 19 exiting, with 75% of the traffic to and from the east on Northfield. That's the Livingston Avenue side. Delays to left turns to and from Collins were observed to be short in duration, and no long vehicle queues were observed on any left turn approach. And the ingress-only drive experienced only 5 traffic movements in the entire hour inbound. In the PM peak hour, 4:45 to 5:45, in the Northfield area of the frontage of the site, was almost identical to the morning. There were 1,316 two-way vehicles, 708 were westbound, 608 were eastbound. It was virtually identical to the morning. There was some, the platoon flow was again observed each way, just as in the morning, and once again, the traffic operated in our area in a free-flowing manner. Collins Terrace at the Northfield intersection, there were 28 inbound vehicles to Collins and 30 outbound. 70% were oriented to and from the east. That's the Livingston Avenue side. That was the heavier side. And once again, the ingress-only drive experienced only 5 inbound vehicles in the entire hour. It's very lightly used. In terms of traffic projections and assignments, for the 55,200 square foot medical office, I identified the peak hour trip generation from the Institute of Transportation Engineers publication, Trip Generation 11th edition. This is the most current edition. and that was for a medical dental office building. And in Table 1 of my report, the medical dental office will generate 141 total two-way trips in the AM peak hour. It's 111 in, 30 out. In the PM, it's 221 with 66 in and 155 out. Now, I performed a comparative analysis of the trip generation for this project versus what the previous use was as a fitness center, which is now vacant, which was identified to me as 40,000 square feet. And the fitness center in the AM peak hour would have a two-way flow of 52 vehicles, and a PM peak hour, a two-way flow of 138. So the medical office produces, in the same peak hours, 89 total trips more in the morning, that's two-way, and 83 more in the evening, and that's once again two-way. The medical office trips result in about 3 vehicles in and out every 2 minutes on average for either peak hour. So that's more or less what we're looking at. And furthermore, the trip generation is distributed between 2 site driveways. It's not all in one focus point. And lastly, in that area, the trips were assigned based on the access provided, as well as the existing traffic counts identified from the counts, and that's how it was oriented. And note we have 15% of the traffic that was identified along Collins going to and from the west. 85% is oriented to the Northfield side. In terms of the analysis, the 2010 Highway Capacity Manual and associated software was applied, and the traffic engineers talk about the quality of flow in terms of levels of service. The board has heard this. If you ever had a traffic engineer here, you've heard this before. We go levels A through F. A and B are very low, short delay conditions, very free-flowing, short queues. C and D are good, also peak hour conditions. You're getting a little more delay, a little more queuing, but these are considered very good operating conditions. Level E is more delay. It's accepted in very developed urbanized or very suburbanized areas. And then you have level F, which doesn't mean failure. It just means you have a lot more congestion, possibly longer delays depending on the number of vehicles present, but it's a delay condition. So at this point, I'm going to jump over to the results from the addendum, because as I said, the original traffic report took into account no left turn restrictions at either driveway. That's not what's proposed now. My addendum responded to what was requested by Mr. Klein, because he requested that the left turn out of the one-way drive be eliminated, and then the track requested the left turn be prohibited out of the drive at Collins. So I'm going to talk only about the ultimate, which is before you now, and which is covered in the addendum report. For the at the Northfield and Collins Terrace intersection, for proposed conditions, the Northfield Road westbound left and through that encompasses the left turn into Collins. The morning peak hour will function at a level of service A, which is a superior level of service, and the Collins Terrace approach will function at a level of service C, that's a mid-level C, which is also a very good performance level for a peak hour. In the PM peak hour, once again, the Northfield Road westbound left and through functions at a level of service A, the best condition, and the Collins Terrace approach functions at a mid-range of a level of service D, which is an acceptable peak hour condition and is also confirmed by your own traffic consultant. At the Collins and what I called in my report Drive A, the Collins Terrace site drive, with no left turn permitted out. All the critical movements in this intersection are at a level of service A to B. So these are excellent performance conditions, and it reflects the minor volumes that are present. at the Northfield egress-only drive with no left turn out. The right turnout functions at a level of service B near an A condition. This is once again a very good condition. By the way, the reason that the left turn was prohibited at this location was in response to a comment made by Mr. Klein where he was concerned about the sight distance of a vehicle coming left out or making left out and being blocked from a view from queuing on Northfield from vehicles on the other side of the queue going westbound. So it was agreed, we jointly agreed to eliminate the left out. That totally eliminates the sight distance concern. And that's why it was done. Okay, now internally, the site access was, the drives and such have already been described by the site engineer. I would note there are no dead-end aisles anywhere within the project. Everything can circulate around the entire project, and there's inter-access between the two site driveways. Last thing I would like to get into, and it was something that was requested by Mr. Klein in his review, was to evaluate its comments 5 and 6, which was to take a look at there is a parking variance required, and there's now 229 spaces that are being proposed, which needs a variance for, I believe it's now 37 spaces. So he suggested that I conduct a parking study of the nearby Summit Medical Facility at 75 East Northfield, which is just down the street, the other side of Livingston Avenue, on the other side of the street. And coincidentally, I was the traffic engineer on that project also when it was before the board. We discussed the time periods to perform, and the Institute of Transportation Engineers Parking Generation publication, current report, Texas, the 5th edition, identifies the peak periods in the morning and the evening for peak parking for medical office, and I appended the table to my report. And in the morning, it's between 10 and 11, and in the evening, afternoon, it's between 2 and 3. Mr. Klein and I discussed this, and we agreed that that would be the time frames to go out. So I did parking counts at the other facility, which is almost the same size as this one. I did them on 10:30 and 2:30, right in the middle of that hourly identification. And the counts I did were done on Thursday, June 29th, 2023. The weather was clear, and 10:30 and 2:30, as I said. The results indicated that in the morning period, 230 spaces were occupied, and this resulted in a parking rate of 4.42 spaces occupied per 1,000 square feet. And while there's 55,200 square feet for the application before you, the 75 Northfield project has, I believe, just 1 second. It's 52,049 square feet, just slightly smaller. So the rate, the municipal ordinance requires 5 spaces per 1,000 or 1 per 200 square feet. This was actually operating at a lower rate than what the municipal standard is. In the PM peak hour, at 2:30, there were 204 spaces occupied, and this resulted in 3.92 spaces per 1,000. Once again, the municipal rate is 5. So this is a little bit below 4, or it's 1 space per 255 square feet. We took an average of the AM and PM. This comes out to 4.17 spaces per 1,000. And if you applied that to the 55,200 square foot proposed project before you, that equals 230 spaces being required. There's 229 being proposed. I would note, in considering the parking survey that I did, these two medical facilities, the one proposed and the one at 75 East Northfield, the East Northfield has an urgent care center in it, which generates more traffic. And I can tell you from firsthand experience, my wife and I have been there a couple of times, and my wife and I have both taken a grandchild there, and I can tell you that room fills up and you do not get out quickly. It's extended periods of time. What this means to any parking survey that's being done, people that are in the urgent care are going to be there for longer times and longer park. So when I come up with these calculations, they're actually conservatively high, I believe, slightly compared to what would be needed for our project, which does not have an urgent care. I would also note that Mr. Klein performed his own parking survey analysis on, excuse me, on June 20th of this year at 10 a.m. He did one in the morning, and he came out with 210 cars parked. I had 230, but he had a rate of 4.03 cars parked per 1,000 square feet, which is lower, even lower than what I had. Now, one thing I would like to point out, and it came up in the track meeting, as I said, I was the traffic engineer for the other medical facility. As part of that resolution of approval, the applicant had to have me go out several years after it was completed and occupied to go out and do a parking survey of how things were working out, or how they did work out. I did pull that information out of my file, and I did that survey on Thursday, May 19th, 2016. This is the 75 East Northfield Road site. What I found was the peak in the afternoon occurred at 3 p.m., and it was 203 cars occupied. At 2:30 in my survey now, which is 7 years later, it was 204, difference of one car. In the earlier period, the peak in the morning period of the other project was at 10:30, so it falls right in those ITE guidelines. It was 176. I had 230, and Mr. Klein had 210. So it was an uptick in the morning, but the afternoon was virtually identical 7 years later. So I just make that observation. I think, Mr. Klein, you had mentioned it at the track meeting, that there was a survey done.
As long as you're referring to Mr. Klein.
This
Let's
Klein.
have it understood. There's
are you-
Mr. Klein who knows what he's talking about.
Are you
And there's me.
related?
Okay.
Okay. Finally, essentially, I think the parking that's being proposed, the variance be granted, that using as a model as Mr. Klein requested, Mr. Lee Klein. It bolsters our request for the variance, and the numbers that we got actually from the 75 East Northfield site, because of the urgent care center generation specific to that building, which is not here in this one, would tend to be even cause slightly higher results. So I think the variance for parking can be granted. Finally, I'd just like to say, and then I'm all done, that ingress and egress from the site, excuse me? Just like to say, ingress and egress from the site was provided in a safe and efficient manner in accordance with sound engineering practice and considering reasonable and prudent driving behavior. That concludes my testimony.
No, I think Mr. Maltz answered all my questions to my satisfaction.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Any questions from the board?
Has there been any consideration given to whether or not a dedicated left turn lane for westbound traffic would be appropriate here, or is the volume such that it's not needed?
You don't have a large volume making that left turn. And also, it's a county road. They would have to approve it because there would be widening to accommodate that left turn lane. As I noted, you only have 40 feet on the west side of the intersection, and you're going up to 48 as you go down the road. If you look at it, I have an aerial photo, a Google map, so you can see how the roadway is widening to get the left turn lane at the Livingston Avenue approach to the signal. You don't have it here. It's just beginning to diverge the paint lines. So you're going to have to wind up with a 12-foot wide widening of the roadway, including all the utility poles, whatever else is in there, drainage. And I believe we're only talking on the order of 75 lefts in the evening and 53 in the morning, and lesser numbers during the rest of the day. So I'm not sure you'd justify a separate left turn lane at this point.
Thank you.
That's an issue for the county.
Any other questions from the board? Any members of the public have any questions as to this witness about his testimony?
Good night, good evening. My name is Hong Yuan, Y-U-A-N, 7 Montgomery Road. And first I want
address, please.
Oh, 7 Montgomery Road.
Thank you.
Yeah. I have read the planning review, the traffic engineering review. It's a very thorough professional review document, and I thank the town to, perform this review for this project. And according to this letter provided by Mr. Lee Klein, dated on September 1st,
Is there a question?
Yes,
Okay.
the question is, 1, 2, 3. There are, the first section, all the comments were not addressed. And I have a question, did I miss something, or something else will be following to address Mr. Lee Klein's, first round of review comments? The first
Mr. Klein?
version, he had comments. And then his updated review dated September 1st. There were notes saying comment not addressed.
Right, and I have another letter dated October 9th.
I
and
see.
I'll have another letter probably dated
okay.
tomorrow.
Thank you.
We'll get
Okay, great. After hearing the traffic parking study, I have a question because is the parking stall still going to be only 18 feet long instead of 20 feet?
I believe most of them are 9 by 18.
Yeah,
I think
if
the
they're
site
9 by
engineer-
18, so they're 10% short of the standard space. If we use the standard space, will you still be able to create 229 spaces there? So that's my question number 1. Question number 2 is, I hear a lot of people were talking about that green buffer being reduced between the residential area, correct? The trees being cutting down or, stuff like that. Are new parking spaces being created in that area where now it is the trees or the buffer?
Yes. The
Okay.
parking lot, yeah, it is being expanded. And just regarding your prior question regarding the size of spaces, we're going to actually defer to our engineer, who will also be doing planning testimony tonight. So we'll hold that question for now.
All right, sure. And I think I applaud your efforts to go to each site to count the traffic, the parking, occupied parking space. But we know, I'm a civil engineer too. As an engineer, we design for
is there a
at
question?
least. Yes, we design for at least 95 percentile of the needs. 85. So although the number fluctuates, at every visit is about 220 to 240 parking space, I think we have the standard here for a reason. Every 200 square feet, we give them 1 parking space, right? But here, we're looking at...
Is there a question?
Yes, the question is, this site is proposing about only giving one lot per 240 square feet, and also it's a reduced parking space. To me, I think it's not good for the public because the parking stalls are too small.
Is there a question?
There is a difference between a question and a statement of opinion.
Oh, sorry.
A statement of opinion comes
Okay.
later in the proceeding.
Okay, so, okay, again, my question, okay, then my next question is, you're left out, right in, right out only, where those westbound traffic will be making their turn back to the westbound Northfield, will they be making the U-turn at South Livingston Avenue?
So if they want to go west on Northfield, they would go out the driveway at Collins, make a right, and come up to the intersection to stop at Northfield and make a left turn there to go west.
So the Collins Terrace and the Northfield, at that T intersection, the left turn out is not prohibited?
No, it's not.
No, but then
The left turnout is prohibited at the driveways.
okay,
The one at Northfield and also at the one at Collins. So you can't make a left out to Collins.
Okay.
You can't make a left out the one-way drive to Northfield.
okay, so.
And that complies with what we were requested to do by Mr. Klein as well as the traffic attendant.
Okay, I have no question then. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from members of the public?
Hi, Mitch Ryan,
How do you spell that?
53 Collinwood.
Spell your last name?
Ryan?
Oh, Ryan, sorry. Thank you.
I'm just, want to make sure I'm not confused. So you got 229 spots, right?
Correct,
And you're building a new 55,000 square foot building?
correct,
So you got
55,200.
4.02 ratio?
I believe that's what it
So
is.
where do the retail tenants park?
They have their own parking lot.
There's a separate parking lot?
Yeah,
Are they restricted?
I believe they will be. I think
Yeah.
I don't know that I can park anywhere to go into the post office.
Yeah, we
Where's
talked
the-
about, we talked about signage at the prior hearing.
Okay, so you're gonna have signage or in restricted spots, they'll be dedicated?
Yes.
Because, if you're short, can people get pushed out onto Collins Drive? And did you take that into account in your parking, in your traffic, if people are parking out on the street?
Well, if they park on the street, they'll be ticketed because it's posted, no stopping or standing.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, name and address again, please.
Hi, I'm Bonnie Dostalik.
Thank you.
I live at 61 Collinwood Avenue. And I wanted to ask if I heard this right. If you're leaving that parking lot going on to Collins Terrace, can I turn left?
It's not proposed to have a left turn there.
So I have to go around the block to go home? I live on Collinwood Avenue, which is down Collins Terrace, and I make a left to get there. So now it's going to be restricted to, I have to make a right, and then a right, and then a right, and then a right, instead of just going left. Okay. The other question I had is,
I just want to make, I think that was requested so that traffic wouldn't go into your residential areas from this development. I hear what you're saying, but it was
can I get a
requested.
special sticker that says I live left-hand
We
turn
didn't want the
permitted?
traffic going into the residential section, so I
Like
believe that
baby
was a
on
request.
board,
We'll get you
lefty on board?
perhaps an
or-
escort.
We'll talk to Chief Marshowitz for you.
Yeah,
Just joking.
it's only because my dad recently had a stroke, so I don't like to
Understand.
go longer than I have to. The other question I had is it a township or municipal, I don't know, speed limit signs? If you're leaving 75 Northfield, the medical building there, and you come up to Northfield Center, and then you go straight up Northfield, there aren't any speed limit signs from the center to Collins Terrace. Nothing says 30 miles an hour. Is that a township thing or a county
That would be,
thing? All right, because,
that would be, that's a county road.
okay, thank you.
Yes.
Hi, John Jay, last name Jay with 56 Collinwood Ave.
What was the address again, I'm sorry?
56
56,
Collinwood.
thank you.
Is there going to be any signs proposed from Hobart Gap onto Collinwood? No left-hand turns accessing this facility?
I mean, the other side from,
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're coming from Hobart, entering Collinwood to enter the facility onto Collins Terrace.
I think that's maybe something that the council would consider. I mean, I think that's not part of this application.
Okay. And then, yeah, because, and just to confirm, if you're coming up Northfield, you are still able to make a left into the parking lot onto Collins Terrace. That's not being restricted.
No, that's not restricted.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Name and address again, please.
My name is Wei-Lin, W-I-L-I-N, 19 Cornerstone.
Thank you.
My question is, according to you says, how many cars in the morning, like around 8 o'clock, to get in the Collins Terrace from the Lafayette side? Like
8 o'clock, I think he's, correct me if I'm wrong, trip generation in the morning peak, how many are coming in that driveway?
Right.
Coming in the driveway?
Yes.
Because I have to send my kid to school in the morning, like 8 o'clock, so I don't have much buffer time. No.
The, coming down Collins Terrace in the morning peak hour.
Right.
Which is about 7:30, 8:30 in there.
Mm-hmm.
Entire hour. The, coming from Northfield to make a left turn into the site drive, there'd be 102 cars in the morning and 72 in the evening. However, as I pointed out, this intersection will operate at a level of service A, which is least delay, minimal backup of any traffic on the street, and will operate very efficiently. Of course, in the opposing direction, you only have 19 cars opposing you in an hour in the morning and 16 in the evening. So that left turn coming in is almost unopposed, so it'll be very efficient, and you're not going to see backups on the street.
So like 100 cars in
an hour.
In an hour. That's a great traffic volume, because every morning I send my kid to school. I only waited like 1 minute. Like that's almost no car getting from the Lafayette side. Now you say you have more than 100 cars getting from the Lafayette side. That's a great volume. That's gonna cost me my kid late to school, because I have to wait your car coming first. Then I'm gonna get out of the street.
Well, the left turn in has to yield, if you're coming from Collinwood
Right.
and going
No,
up towards Northfield,
Right.
you're the through vehicle.
Mhm.
By motor vehicle guidelines, requirements, the left turning traffic has to yield to you. It's not the other way around. In addition, this is not a huge amount of traffic, and it's almost unopposed, so it's not going to have big, long queues extending all the way out to Northfield. The analysis shows it's going to operate very efficiently.
So you say the other 75 North East Rockfield, that facility is enclosed area. So they have their own entrance on the Rockfield Avenue, right?
At 75?
Yeah, 75.
Yes, they have their own entrance.
Yeah, that's why they don't bother the local resident there, right? Because they have their own entrance. This one is different. This one will share the street. So if your car coming more, and that cause our car to pull out very late, That's a problem. So can you make entrance on your own entrance on the Rockfield Avenue?
No.
No?
There's no ability to do that. There's already an egress-only drive that's being proposed for vehicles exiting from the other end of the lot. But there's no place to put another driveway from the site out to Northfield.
all the cars that are generated by this development, whether they're coming out and they can only make a right turn out, they have to stop and wait for you to go past. And anybody coming in, making a left turn, has to yield to you as a through. So you're not going to see any change in delay. There'll be more cars turning, but you won't have to stop.
Oh, I have to wait with a car from Rockville Avenue coming first. I'm not gonna go.
Oh, now you're talking about Collins and
Yeah,
Northfield.
intersection.
Collins and Northfield. So
Yeah.
now talk about the
Yeah.
level of service of Collins and Northfield.
Right.
Right. He
Because
was just talking about the driveway.
Oh, no,
first.
driveway, no.
Okay.
We talked about the Collins Terrace approach in the
Yeah,
build
yeah.
condition.
Yeah, right.
Which was what we called, trying not to be too technical, a level of service C in the morning and a level of service D in the evening, which are good peak hour operating conditions. It's projected to be about 18 and a half seconds delay in the morning coming out of Collins, and about 30 seconds in the evening, which is the 4:45, 5:45. It's way after school that's out. So I don't see a real problem down there.
No problem at all?
No.
All right, thank you.
Could you remind us of the operating hours of this location?
Yeah, I just want to make sure we. You have it, right? Correct. I just want to make sure we're accurate. Stupid application.
Can I say what I have in my notes? And you can tell me.
I
Okay.
have notes as
Save
well.
a few seconds?
Yeah, I appreciate it.
I didn't
I have in
realize
my
I-
notes Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Yeah.
Saturday, 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. Sunday, 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. Sunday closed, but if it were to be open, it would be 7 a.m. to 1 p.m.
I also have that it will operate from 8:30 to 5 in general, but those are the regular hours.
Right, I wrote that down later.
Right.
7 a.m. was for
Yeah, I
blood
think-
tests.
yeah.
Right, and then, yeah.
Correct.
Also, I believe it was noted that Saturday generates maybe 20% of what they would have during the same hours. So it's really very, very low.
Mr. Waltz, you didn't do a comparison of a Saturday fitness center to a Saturday
No, I
medical
didn't.
office building, but yeah, but it'd be less.
Any other questions for Mr. Maltz?
Can I ask a follow-up?
Yes, please.
I was just thinking, are the two, is the retail and the medical? on
Yeah,
the same-
name and address,
same
please.
part?
No.
Mitch Ryan.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mitch Ryan at 53.
Collinwood.
Okay.
I was just wondering if the retail and the medical are owned by the same owner.
They are not.
They're not. Do you know what the parking ratio is for the retail? Doesn't look really good. And you do have a condition for a potential prescriptive easement here. So what's to stop the retail owner for suing for that prescriptive easement? And therefore getting parking spots or be able to use parking
There's
spots?
no claim of a prescriptive easement here, sir.
I'm
There's no
sorry?
claim. There is no claim of a prescriptive easement in this situation.
They've been using that for how long? How long has this been available?
One of the things that I would be asking for if we were proceeding,
Yeah.
I certainly, if I was the owner and you're taking my
Yeah.
spots away, I would certainly sue.
Well.
And it's
Well,
gotta be there.
there is an existing cross-access easement, which was discussed at the initial hearing, so we do not have a concern of prescriptive easements. They do not have a right or entitlement to our property.
Do you have an REA?
one of the things,
I'm sorry?
one of the things
A reciprocal
One of the
easement?
things that I would require as a condition, if we were to approve this, and I would do this in any place where there is a risk of cross easement being violated, is that I would require that a copy of the existing cross easement agreement be submitted to the town as part of the documentation that would have to be on file. So if there is such a problem, we would know, and the building department of the town would know, and would have to deal with it.
Agreed.
Yeah, I would think you need to know before you say that you should grant a variance on the parking.
A condition that is made to an application would require that the condition be met before any permits were issued. That again is something we do as a standard where we want to make sure that all the conditions that we are imposing are met before any construction starts. So I think anybody who has any concern about any of these things that are being testified to, we will be listening, and if we do approve this, we will approve it with our standard conditions that make sure that no permits are issued until key elements are established as a matter of record.
Any other questions from the public?
Hello.
Name and address again, please.
Melissa Cianci.
Thank you. An address?
51 Collinwood.
Thank you.
You mentioned that there's no other place to put the ingress or egress that another resident had mentioned, but the building itself is being demolished, the current building, correct?
Correct.
And there would be no other way to add another driveway into that building.
Well, the comment by a prior resident was other than Collins, coming out to Collins. In other words, come out to Northfield. If you come out to Northfield, you're going to have to chop a piece of the building off in order to put a driveway in. You have to reconfigure the building.
Okay. You said you compared the parking with the similar building over at 75 Northfield?
Yes.
And you use that kind of as a basis for this project, but is it true that 75 Northfield, don't they have their own turning lane?
They have a left turn lane out of the median.
Okay. And there will be no left turn lane on Northfield into Collins Terrace or into the driveway otherwise?
No.
So,
The left turn lane at 75 Northfield was cut out of the existing median that was already in Northfield in that location. There is no median here.
and the proposed building, this one, is actually bigger than the building over at 75 Northfield.
Slightly.
correct? The change of traffic that'll be coming in and out of Collins Terrace from what it is currently or what it was when it was the New York Sports Club or the other gym names, Jack LaLanne, et cetera, before that number versus the number that it should be, what is the difference there? Or the number that it will be when this building is up?
Are you talking about the trip generation comparison I did?
Yes.
For the building that we're talking about here, 55,200 square feet, total traffic in the morning peak hour would be 141 trips, evening be 221. For the fitness center, which is vacant, it would be 52 and 138 the AM PM. So that's a difference in the morning. The medical office would produce 89 more trips, total two-way, not 89 in and 89 out. It's 89 total two-way, and the evening would be 83. So that works out on an average basis. It's about 3 vehicles in and out every 2 minutes, or 1 to 2 every minute.
Now, did you take that number with the vehicles coming in and out of Northfield at Collins? or the vehicles going into the driveway from Collins Terrace into the driveway at Northfield?
Well, there's an assignment made between at the Collins Drive, which can go up Northfield, and the left turnout is eliminated. They can make a right out, or they can make lefts and rights in. There's also the one-way drive, egress only to Northfield, which you can go out and make a right out onto Northfield. That happens to be, pattern-wise, based on the counts that were done at Collins at Northfield, 70 to 75% of the traffic coming out of Collins or two-way on Northfield in and out of Collins was oriented towards Livingston Avenue. So
Okay.
it gets split up between the two driveways. It's not all concentrated in one spot.
I see. Did you take notice of any of the cars that were going in from Collins Terrace,
In what way?
coming off of Northfield and going into the driveway off of Collins Terrace, like into the building's driveway?
Well,
into
obviously,
the
I
parking lot?
did the counts. I was sitting there for 4 hours. And I was
That's all?
sitting across the street in the property that's vacant now, the building that's vacant,
Mm-hmm.
along their driveway, and I had a full view of that intersection, and I made notes as to
What
what
I'm
was
asking
occurring.
is, how many of those vehicles went into the driveway there? Not into Collins Terrace, going into the parking lot?
Yeah, go to Exhibit 2. Go to Exhibit 2 in your original report.
Your report?
The 2023 existing peak hour traffic volumes.
Okay.
That includes the volumes coming in and out of Site Driveway A, which is the Collins Terrace driveway.
Okay, so now,
Yeah, no problem.
what numbers are you looking for?
The 3 and 11, the 3 and 12, the 2 and 6, those small numbers coming in
Okay,
and
so
out.
you're looking at what today is coming from Collins into the existing drive?
Right.
Okay, well, today, in the morning, coming south, call it southbound, from Northfield, the left turn volume, making a left into the existing drive, was 3 vehicles in the morning and 11 in the evening. Coming the other way, making a right in, coming from the Collinwood area, there was 1 that made a right in the morning and 4 in the evening. That's not the through traffic on the roadway. The through traffic on the roadway is there
Right.
too.
So, and that was a current study, or that was from?
That's current.
That's current. Do you have any data from when it was operating as one of the sports clubs?
No, I don't.
No. Okay. So you based a lot of the data based on the 55,200 square feet building, correct?
Correct.
How much would that change if it were, say, a 34,000 square foot building?
Well, it would be obviously lower. I haven't done that analysis, so I can't tell you what the number is. It'd probably be somewhere in the range of 35 to 40% lower, something like that.
Okay.
But
And,
that's purely a hypothetical, though.
right. Did you take into account any of the school buses that come in and out of Collins Terrace or Collinwood and need to make the turns out of there? Because the school bus routes are pretty important during those peak hours.
Yes, in fact, I saw children being picked up in the morning. It wasn't in the evening because school is over. The rush hour in the evening was.
Well, you mentioned the peak hours being, that study being at 2:30 and, right?
No.
7 to 9, 4 to 6.
Oh, I heard, okay.
That was the
Oh,
parking.
no, that was the parking study, 2:30 in the afternoon.
Okay, 2:30 is
Park cars.
parking.
The peak hours at this area were 7:30 to 8:30 in the morning, which would encompass when school will be. In fact, I observed school bus go in and out, or school buses on Northfield. In fact, I think there's children on Collins that got picked up.
Many.
And, well, I didn't see how many there were. I saw a few, but I can't tell you exactly how many. And the evening, the peak hour is 4:45 to 5:45, which is way after school.
Mm-hmm. Do you think there's anything else that can be done to lessen the impact on the residential neighborhood that Collins Terrace turns into Collinwood Avenue?
Correct.
And there's many children on that street. Is there anything we can do to lessen the impact of people cutting through Collinwood from Hobart Gap to get to this building, or preventing any more people coming down, even if you have a no left turn sign there?
Well, we already incorporated the left turn prohibition coming out of the Collins Drive. You know, based on the request from TRAC, it was specifically noted to accommodate people, residents that live to the west on that roadway, to prohibit the left turn out and thereby reduce some of the traffic, which it did. And it was reassigned in other directions. So we've already tried to address that.
I was asking if there's anything else that could be done.
No, I don't really think there is. I mean, you have to have a right out. If that's the case, it's a one-way drive in. You can't accommodate that.
The parking variance that's being asked for would allow for, 37 spaces?
Correct.
And if those 37 spaces are necessary based on the comparison to the 75 Northfield property in the morning having 230 spaces occupied, and this site being reduced down to 229 spaces with a larger building, if those 37 spaces are needed, where will they park? Will they park in front of my house?
I can't tell you that.
Because you mentioned that there was a no stopping and standing spot, but that's really right only in front of the building there. It doesn't extend to the rest of Collins Terrace and Collinwood Avenue. And there's nothing on our streets that say private residential area, no through traffic, no outside parking allowed.
Well, certainly something for the council to consider is, they can put, parking limitations on different parts of the road. And it's been done in the other situations. It's not for this board to do, but that's one of the reasons why we have a town council liaison on the planning board, so that council member can go back and can discuss that. And it's been done in other situations. It's, this isn't the only place that, that has had a situation like this. So it's something that, Councilwoman Begoli can go back to the town council and, discuss it with the town manager and discuss it with our colleagues, and, put, some sort of parking restriction, not necessarily no parking, but certainly time parking that would, be certainly keep people from doing that.
There was a time many years ago that our neighborhood was only permit parking only.
There used to be permit parking there,
Right.
correct. Yeah.
I don't know if that's something that could be done again, or how
There
that
are
would work
a lot of pros
otherwise,
and
but-
cons to that. There are other areas that have asked for permit parking, and it just, a lot of times, just doesn't work that well.
I guess the concern is, if this variance is granted and there's 37 spaces that are missing, those 37 spaces are going to be on our street, and I don't know who these patients are. Like, they're not my neighbors. I don't trust them. My kids are out there playing. The concern is that overflow is going to be on our residential street
That's something that the council can address.
and not in the parking lot where it should be.
So if there is an overflow, you can come before the council and ask for the things that you're asking for now, whether in a conference table meeting, put it up for discussion of the council to see if that can be, there's something that can be done. I know
But
other
nothing can be done until the damage is already done.
No, well, if that is an issue and that issue is occurring, then that would be, we can't anticipate that something will occur. So if an issue is occurring and it's a problem, like you're saying it could be, and it's actually happening, then we would come before council, ask for the request that you're making tonight. And in other areas, it has been addressed, as Mr. Fernandez has stated.
You have a number of other former elected officials up here that have dealt with this over the years. So this isn't something that, that has never been addressed in the past. And there are a number of ways of dealing with it, sometimes very creative ways of dealing with it, to address any concerns that the residents have. Because one of the last things that we want to happen is have those impacts, on the local residents. And if there are, these, things that do happen that were unanticipated, they can be addressed.
Right, right. I guess that's the purpose of the zoning laws, right? So that there's enough spaces for the patients of the building so that it wouldn't have to impact the
Right, if there's a
neighborhood.
variance requested, and, no saying whether it will be granted or not, but, if the board does, if the board does grant the variance request, then, as Councilwoman Begoli has mentioned, then, it's, none of us have crystal balls. If there does become a problem, then that can be addressed.
Okay.
But it could be that it doesn't create a problem.
Collins Terrace is posted, no stopping or standing until you get to Collingwood. So there is no parking on Collins Terrace.
Right, so Collins Terrace, it has like a pretty sharp left turn,
Right.
but there's no stop sign there, there's no
Well, it's one street,
stop.
it just
It
turns
just
90
turns
degrees.
into
Right.
Collinwood, right? So if it doesn't say it, I don't think it says it past the
Right.
driveway.
It
It
just
says it
says-
in between Northfield and,
And Collingwood,
right.
yeah.
So what I'm saying is, it's only like 10 feet more before you're on Collinwood. Because it does, there's no like change, the street doesn't really change. You wouldn't notice that you're not
Right,
on-
look, we can discuss hypotheticals all day. I think that, they're, number one, if the variance is approved, and then number two, if approved, if it creates a problem, there are, clearly ways of, easily dealing with those things.
Okay. All right. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Bonnie Dustalik at 61 Collinwood Avenue. And regarding, have you anticipated people waiting in regular parking spots to get into the EV charging spots? Because I understand it's free. So I know that I've run into that over at the Livingston Mall, people waiting.
I think there was testimony last time about turning them off at a specific time, so that would not occur. I mean, those,
Well,
they're
like
pretty
during business
sophisticated. You can-
hours, people waiting for someone to run out, get their car out of that spot so they can then pull into it. So have you anticipated, the person who says, oh, I know where that free charging station is, I'll just wait in my car in a parking spot, filling up the lot to get to that charging station? That just popped into my, I don't have an electric vehicle, but these are things I hear from other people.
No, and it does sometimes create a problem where people just come and they leave their cars there. But I think that's why there was testimony last time that there was going to be turned off after a certain time, so people are, you're not just going to be able to come in there, leave your car, and then, leave it there overnight and then come get it the next day.
Oh, but during the day, they wait. It's like when you're waiting for that great parking spot. I'm waiting for that lady to come move her car after her doctor's appointment so I can pull in. I'm not a patient of this building, but I know this is a free charging spot. I was wondering, those people are going to take up spots. If that's going to create a problem with the parking, number of parking spots.
Okay, thank you.
An operational question which could have some effect on parking. The number of doctors that will have offices in that building, will they be there 5 days a week, or like other Summit locations, 2 days here, 2 days up here, and 3 days there, which means there will be empty offices part of the time? Is that so?
That is so. I think that's consistent with what Mr. Natali testified to
I
at
missed
the
it,
first
okay.
meeting. Yeah, he
Right,
did,
forgot it.
yes. Very similar, and you are correct.
So the building will not be full of doctors 5 days a week like other medical buildings might be?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the public? Yes.
Allison Greenspan, 44 Collinwood Avenue. I guess I must have missed some prior hearings.
Yeah,
The
hold on.
size of the building.
You're represented by,
I am.
yeah,
I
so
came-
so you're already represented by counsel? She's here representing you on this? And I
Yes,
know
but
she's
she
been up
said
here
I
asking
could also
questions on your
come
behalf.
question. I thought I could also ask a question on my own.
If-
No?
You're represented. That's why we asked for,
Okay, I'll have her ask my question.
yeah, that'd be fine. Thank you.
Hello, Edward Mina, M-I-N-A, resident of 19 West Harrison Place. Thank you for answering the prior questions. So I did more of a deeper dive into the traffic report, looked at the numbers, and I just had some questions about the projections. So specifically on page 25, I saw some numbers, and so the first question I really have is
You said page 25?
page 25 of the Klein Traffic Consulting.
There is no 25.
The one that was on the meeting agenda notes from September 5th, the first time we had this meeting. The title is Traffic Review and Response Letter. It's part of the application documents.
What is it
Yeah, you
dated?
wanna see it?
Yeah.
Oh, so it's page
Sorry.
Is it your August report?
Oh, so, all right, so he's looking at my trip generation table that I prepared in my letter. So you go to my letter, and it's the last page. Is that correct?
Yes.
We don't have the trip generation.
Is that Lee's from?
Yeah, thanks.
So essentially, my first question was, I was wondering if you could elaborate more about the sampling process for how data is collected in terms of, is it just picking 2 arbitrary days, which is what I was reading here, and then using that as an estimation for what the future projections are, or is there some sort of modeling process? So I was just curious what the way those numbers are
Well,
calculated.
first of all, the trip generation, it's not something we model in the field from the traffic counts. This comes from a publication from the Institute of Transportation Engineers entitled Trip Generation. The current edition, which is new, is the 11th edition, and it stacks up like this. There are 4 or 5 volumes. And what it is, it's the most composite compilation of trip generation, peak hour trip generation, another trip generation, based on different parameters. It could be square feet, employees, or whatever, depending. And it covers virtually every type of land use. And that's where it's used nationally. It's considered the source. And in fact, on residential applications and developments, the New Jersey Residential Site Improvement Standards specifically say you have to use that document. It's not based on something I did or something Mr. Klein did. It's a national publication which all traffic engineers use, and we use the rates. They compile studies for all the different uses, residential, medical, general office, and they compile them and come up with the statistical information on how, and also how it's to be used. And that's how the trip generation for the medical office here was developed, as well as the comparison to the fitness center. And interestingly enough, on the last page of Mr. Klein's review report, he put in the printout from the ITE. I put it in table 1 of my report. I just extracted the sections I needed, but he and I have identical, exactly to the number, results.
Okay, thank you for explaining that. So you're saying is that it's a combination of pre-calculated statistics as well as manual sampling in the field?
It's based on studies that have been submitted and accepted by the Institute of Transportation Engineers.
Yes, I guess my question is more on the second part. does this hold standard for everything, or is there anything that's, because you mentioned, right, you were manually counting, and
I was manually counting cars on the street.
Okay.
I wasn't counting something related to trip generation for medical use.
Okay, so essentially, these statistics are supposed to be representative for any situation, including
For the specific use we're talking about.
for the specific use.
There's other types of office uses.
Sure, of course, okay. But for this specific case that we're talking about, these numbers are supposed to be representative. Okay, I guess so my follow-up question is there any consideration into, I guess these numbers wouldn't really consider other things, right? They wouldn't really consider, new construction, so 17 Northfield, which is being built across the street. You wouldn't consider past accident data from, sorry, you said I was confusing two things. I just want to know if the numbers are representative of the actual area we live in and the density of the area we live in, and I also want to know if they're future-proof.
The trip generation numbers are for a 55,200 square foot office. It's made up of data that was collected at a 38,000 square foot medical office building, a 42,000 square foot medical office building, one in California, one in New Mexico, one in New Jersey, one in New York. They collect that all, put that together, and they come up with formulas and average rates, and that's what Mr. Maltz uses. That's what I use when I do traffic impact. That's one thing, to project the trips by a 55,000 square foot medical office. Now, the other thing you were talking about was the background growth. Is that what you meant? Other developments in the area?
Yeah, external factors.
Right, and he said he took into account the corner, the intersection at the corner of where the old church was, that they got approval for that, but it hasn't been built yet, so he put that traffic in the background. He used a 1% growth factor because DOT says a road like Northfield gets a 1%, right? 1 or 1.25% background growth. So that gets you to this future condition when nothing's been built yet, but will raise the volumes up. Then he puts on the traffic from the 55,000 square foot medical office and then analyzes the intersection.
Okay.
Does that answer?
Yes, and so is there any also data like on accidents, past historical accidents? Because I work in that area and I see a lot of accidents happen a lot, so I'm just curious how that will affect.
Typically, we would not ask him to do that unless there was a propensity for some sort of accident in a particular location. So in this case, we haven't asked him to do that. We could, I mean,
would it be possible?
You could Oprah it just to see how many there are. If there's less than 5 in a 12-month period, then there's nothing that can be done. But
yeah.
It's not a new area. So if there was a problem with the left turn going into Collins, we would have known about it by now. This development's not going to make it worse, level of service-wise. And there's a lot of these intersections along Northfield where when I drive Northfield, I hang in the right lane because I know people are going to be making a left turn.
Yeah. So to formalize my concern is, I take the bus to New York City from there, so I see a lot of accidents. I've almost been hit by a car multiple times. And so my concern is that this propensity for more traffic volume, I just want to know how that's being taken into account for this new construction.
All Mr. Maltz did was a level of service analysis, the intersection of Collins and Northfield, Northfield and the site driveway, the site driveway and Collins. Levels of service are well within acceptable parameters. If there was a level of service F at a particular location, he might go out and do a gap study to show that you can make a left out of Collins onto Northfield. If it was even worse, then we may say, there's an issue here, and the police may have chimed in and said, we want you to look at the last 3 years of crashes there and see if there's an issue. But it hasn't risen to that level yet.
So we have to wait kind of for issues to start arising before we start considering the data.
No, I'm saying that they've hit all the marks as they've done their analysis.
Sure.
And they haven't even gotten to the point where they need to do a gap study to see if there's enough capacity to make a left turn out because he has an adequate level of service. So I'm saying if it were to be that much worse, then we may have asked for that. But we don't need to ask for that in this situation right now.
Okay. So I guess what is done now is enough for the town to say that it's okay for this level of density and traffic volume. And I guess you mentioned that he had taken multiple things into account, so I'm just curious, how are those numbers brought together? I don't need formulas or anything. I'm just curious, like 1% growth rate, all these calculations, are these being used to compute the new flow rates for traffic?
It's all in the report.
It's all in the report.
He followed industry standards in preparing his traffic impact study.
Okay. And so is this mainly, all these reports mainly focused on that intersection between Northfield and Collinwood Avenue? And no consideration into Hobart Gap and the other intersections as well?
When we do a traffic impact study, we typically look at greater than 100 peak hour trips. So in a situation where if people were to go down Collins to Collingwood and to Hobart Gap, definitely would be less than 100 vehicles using that intersection. I think even, I got to look at the numbers again, but even Collins and Northfield was done because it's adjacent to the property. But we wouldn't chase this down Northfield. We wouldn't be looking at the signal with South Livingston. We wouldn't be looking at Hobart and Collingwood because there's not enough volume to make a difference. If you go out and do a traffic count, you go back the next day and do a traffic count, the volume difference there is probably more than the amount of traffic that would be using Collinwood and Hobart Gap.
Okay. All right, and so just as a final clarifying question, so no accident or previous police data has been used to kind of infer any decisions with the new traffic that will probably arise with this new building construction?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, my name is Carolina Kubilos at 22 West Harrison Place. And I have a Kubilos, Cubillos. Thank you. Okay. So my question is, if you had a smaller building, say 34,000 square feet, the traffic would be less, correct?
Yes.
And the need for all the variances for the extra parking would not be necessary, correct?
I would assume so.
In the context of the land use law, how would the increase in traffic flow into our neighborhood by almost fivefold secure the residents of our community continued safety, clean air, and no exacerbation of the noise pollution?
Yeah, I don't know if that's sounds like a planning question for my traffic engineer.
Should I save it for whom then? Planning?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
I have a comment. I know last time that we were here, made lots of comments about the plan. I'm very happy with what I saw tonight. I always love it when a developer goes and listens to what the residents are looking for. I was very happy to see some shade trees and the EV stations moved. It did feel to me that you did take many of the things that were spoken about at the last meeting into consideration, and that is appreciated. Thank you. Did it? Yeah. It's your
So, hold on, you gotta tell me your name. So Dr. Sarah Mina, 19 West Harrison Place. My brother just spoke. Mina, M-I-N-A. Dr. Mina, M-I-N-A. I'm a fellow NJIT alumni, by the way.
There you go.
So, went there, biomedical engineer, not traffic, but biomedical. My mom just wants to speak. Her name is Teresa, last name Mina. She just wants to say something about the traffic, because, yes, she has a comment about the traffic. She just wants to know, how are you going to fix the accidents that happen?
That's
Yeah,
fine.
how will you fix the accidents that happen, because they do happen?
A lot of time when I drive my
Is there a question?
Yes, it's a question.
Okay, what's your question?
When I drive my son a lot to high school and I go a right side, and another car come from the right inside the car. It take me a lot of time. It hit each other. And sometimes the school bus stop also in the corner, and a lot of family stop in the corner also. So I go around in the big wide one, I can go to the right side to go out. I work every day. I work from 6 in the morning to 6 p.m. And I see this terrible thing. I see terrible thing. And I come at night and see a lot also of deer. When I go inside the street, I live in this is very bad area for accident. And I had several times, and God save us when I drive the children. I come and drive it, and the other one go like this. And the deer also. A lot of deer came here in this area also.
Thank you.
How it fit two cars? How to fit two cars? It's a small area.
You will have an opportunity at the end to make comments under oath. If there's not a question, then we're done.
So pretty much her question is, have you considered school buses, deers in that small area?
I think there was testimony all along about the buses and the time and that.
How you take the long tree and you make me a short tree like this?
So
I still on the window, I see the mass of
Is there a question?
So she has a question about the tree stuff. Can we ask that now? She missed it earlier about the Mr. Conway, I think it was.
He takes a big tree in front of
What's the question? If it's a question that's already been asked, I don't want to
So pretty much
repeat a lot of these.
I was just home to pick her up and I saw there's a big tree, and is that big tree gonna be cut and
Which tree?
it is a huge big tree. I have a picture of it that's right on the grass where the bioswale is gonna be.
I'm sure Mr. Conway would be happy to take a look at the
Yes.
picture after the hearing, and he can.
Can he go over it?
And he can talk to you about that.
Yeah.
Okay?
So she just wants to ask, are you gonna remove all the trees on the grass? All the trees, every tree, even the big ones that's been there for a while?
We had
The
hours
healthy
of
one?
testimony about this before.
Yeah, she just missed it.
I understand.
The
but,
healthy
you know,
trees?
but it's not fair to everybody else to go through it all again.
Yeah, okay.
It's not healthy also to destroy
But it's also
us.
not fair to us, and you're really telling us something, and it might not come true. That's why.
To destroy the green area for the car, I have calabria on this side.
Is there?
I feel
Okay,
alive.
we're not doing this.
Okay.
If there's a question, you can ask.
So pretty much, so we can go over the fence.
America for the
It's
tree
okay.
also like this.
Okay. I'm cutting this off now. So thank
So
you.
we can speak to the person for the green plants, because we are not very happy with how it's gonna be. We're not very happy with that.
If you missed the testimony,
You
there'll
can
be a
watch it on-
YouTube video in a couple of days posted.
You can watch it all
the
there.
entire hearing.
Okay, you can watch it all there.
We're not happy with it. What then?
Okay, you'll be able to come in at the end and make a sworn statement under oath at the end of the hearing.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Thank you.
George Mina. George Mina, 19 West Harrison Place. Yeah, anybody can hear me?
Yes.
All right, you hear me. Is my question for the owner to build this building, this project. What he add for the specialized for doctor, because we have 75 Northfield.
Is there a question for the
My
witnesses
question
as to what they
what he
testified about?
have, what he added. We have health care, we have everything. I got my appointment the same day.
Do you have a question for the
Question,
witnesses about what they testified about?
What he added for specialized medical health. Can I know?
I believe your question is, why do they need another building?
Yes, because we have already complete building.
Okay, we now understand the question.
Okay.
And I believe there was testimony about that.
Yeah, so we had extensive testimony regarding Summit Health, their needs, and the reason why they chose this location. They're not building a medical building just for the sake of it, without a need. And I believe Mr. Natali provided detailed testimony and answered a lot of questions about it when we were here on September 5th.
September.
Yep.
Is it last September?
No, this past September.
No,
Past September?
Yeah,
3 weeks ago.
Yes.
We don't hear about this testimony.
No,
we don't
Well,
hear about this.
you were here for that hearing.
Yeah?
You were here for that hearing.
No?
You were. You were here for that hearing. And you know, there was testimony about it.
You were here.
Yeah, you were here.
I don't know what's the point for the ad building. We have already a complete building for.
Is there a question?
This is my question. We don't need any building. Got a parking lot for this for buses. New York
if I can
buses.
speak, can I speak? Okay. So you were here for we had all that testimony here at the first hearing. What I would suggest again, you know, it's all on.
Okay,
Go. You know, you can go and you can watch the hearing all over again. And there was
Okay.
testimony about it.
If I hear here, I did this. We are disagree. We disagree
That's
because
okay.
that project
so if
is
you did-
bad project. We need
Excuse
parking lot.
me. Okay, I'm gonna cut you off now. Okay, so you'll have an opportunity to make sworn statements at the end of the hearing about your position about the project. Here is an opportunity to ask questions, and we're done. Okay, and if you have a question, you can ask a question.
This is my question for anybody here.
Okay, no, there's a question for the witness about his testimony.
All right. You talk about traffic,
Okay, thank you. Okay.
trees. No,
Okay.
no. We don't care by this.
Okay.
We care by something benefit for the Livingston. We destroy Livingston.
Okay, we had that testimony. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, seeing nobody else. We finish at 10:30. We're there.
We are there, there and beyond.
So what do we have as another date?
We have December 5th. That will be a partial meeting, though. Or if you'd like 12/19, that's going to be a special meeting, and you'll have the entire evening.
Architecture. Catherine, when you say partial on the 5th, what do you
There's-
ballpark?
Half of the meeting, perhaps. There's
What
there's one
else?
scheduled.
What else is on that night?
Northfield Dental is penciled in for that, so it's up to you.
Why don't we just take the 5th and let's see how it goes.
Okay.
I take the 5th.
You're taking December 5th?
Yes, Chairman. We accept the offer of the 5th, I should say, put it
We
that
just want to
way.
keep you on the calendar. So December 5th, we start at 7:30. This is your notice. No further notice will be required. And with that, we're done.
Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate the time.
So, John, you don't need these.
No,
You don't, I'm not going to put it.
I don't. Pencil it on your calendar just in
told her
case
to relax.
anything pops, but I don't think so. Well, Mike, I guess I'm not reaching you.
And what time was it for? 7:30?
7:30.
I just want to say hello to a fellow NJIT lecturer. I teach a course on real estate technology. Real estate technology.
Okay. Yeah, the school, I mean, I graduated originally in 69. Boy, is it
But
so
you're teaching
different.
there.
I used to.
Oh,
In the past, I used to teach highway engineering, juniors. But then they kicked me upstairs to teach basically a graduate